Hello and welcome to the Weekly Stuff Podcast with Jonathan Lack.
And Sean Chapman.
We are here, as always, to talk about stuff.
Yes.
This week on the show, busy show. Our two main topics is we're going to talk about the latest Twin Peaks.
As always.
Another masterpiece.
Yes, fantastic episode.
We're going to talk about the game Sonic Mania in detail.
Yeah.
We mentioned it a little bit last time, but now we're going to dive into spoiler depth. And I'll say one thing about it right here. This is not a game you want spoiled if you haven't played it. Weirdly, more than like any narrative game this year, Sonic Mania is so chock full of surprises. Don't listen to us. Just go play it and then listen to us.
Yeah, absolutely. There are lots of weird, cool gameplay twists peppered all throughout that game that are best experienced fresh.
Unless you don't care about Sonic, and maybe we can make you care by talking about it.
Yeah.
But that's what that'll be
about.
Because
I think if there's one game that is going to get you to care and understand about like original classic 2D Sonic games, Sonic Mania is the one.
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff to talk about. That is a game I love immensely, even when I hate it. And that makes it feel like a proper Genesis game.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we will get into that. We also have some news, including our main news topic today is going to be the Super NES Classic pre-order clusterfuck, as it's noted in our outline, which happened today, Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I'm going to mention that because I saw it go down in real time.
It was a thing. It was fun to watch on the sidelines of someone who, like, is not that interested in getting one of those things and just is curious, like, to see the car wreck.
Yeah. It went as bad as it possibly could have gone.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then we're going to have some stuff and other things. But let's start with a couple pieces of housekeeping, Sean.
All right.
So this Monday, Halo Episode 5 went up on YouTube.
Yes, it did.
Episode 4 went up on Friday. So there's been 4 and 5 since we last did a podcast. So that's the first half of Halo. You can watch all 5 of those episodes up on YouTube. 6 through 10 are still exclusive on Patreon. $10 a month, you get all of that stuff. That's like a good 3 hours of content across those episodes. And I think the second 5 episodes are even better than the first 5.
Yeah. I'm just very excited that people can finally, like, the larger public can witness my flawless, no-death playthrough of Assault on the Control Room. Just went right through that level like a knife through hot butter.
Assault on the Control Room is episode 5, so that's out now, and I have to say that might be my favorite episode of the series.
It's very good.
It's a very fun one, and was a challenge to edit, but a fun challenge, and you'll see why. So yeah, we get to see that, and then episode 6 is going to be public on Friday, and 2 more weeks of Halo stuff, and then we're going to move on to some other games, which we've already started shooting for, and those are turning out great. So, although there was a technical hiccup you may or may not hear about at some point.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all fun stuff. Doctor Who, our Doctor Who bonus podcast, number 1, is going to be live today. In our podcast feed. That's scheduled to go up. So when you're listening to this, that is live for the public. It's already been on Patreon for a full week. So if you listen to this and you like it, this is the episode where we talk about the first Doctor story, the Aztecs. It's about 45 minutes long. And if you like that, consider also our Patreon, because at the $5 level, you get that one early. And so it's really good, and I think you're going to like that. And if you've never gotten into classic Doctor Who, this is for you. This is not like a deep dive in the sense of like, for people who've seen all of classic Doctor Who. It's meant to be a guide through the series.
Yes, so if you're totally new to classic Doctor Who, you're a fan of new Doctor Who, but have never like ventured into the depths of the old stuff, this is designed to be an entry point as well as just a sort of fun discussion about the episodes.
Yeah, we're not going to make you watch Time in the Rani.
Not yet.
We're going to give you Tomb of the Cybermen.
Yes.
Good stuff.
I haven't fully decided a 7th Doctor episode yet, so let's not give me too many ideas, Jonathan, because you haven't seen Time in the Rani either.
I watched the first 5 minutes the other day, and boy, that's a good regeneration sequence.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, so that's all our housekeeping stuff. Patreon.com/weeklystuffpodcast. Sean, what stuff do you have going on?
Not a huge amount of stuff. It's mostly, playing Sonic Mania. I'm very close to finishing my, like, insane completion playthrough of Nier Automata now, like my second go through at that game. It's a very fun game to just relax to at this point, now that I know all the story and that side of the game, and I can just totally relax and be like, even if I'm in like the part where the story is super fucking dark all the time, I can still kind of more relax and take my time and just be like, I'm just gonna walk around and enjoy the sights and do the side quests and stuff that I missed the first time through. So I've been doing that. Another thing I have been doing that I've been kind of doing for a week or two now, but I didn't feel like I had much to talk about it yet, but I will soon, is I have been doing a rewatch of the first 4 seasons of Breaking Bad, and then to finally get to the last 5th season of Breaking Bad, because I had watched the first 4 seasons, because I had watched the first 4 seasons right when the 4th season finished airing, which was a long time ago now, and I just kept on meaning to watch the 5th season and kept on putting it off, and then eventually I was just like, you know what, fuck it. I should just actually do this, because I also want to watch Better Call Saul at some point, and even though I know it's a prequel and everything, I still want to have finished Breaking Bad before watching Better Call Saul.
And you should. You should, I'll just say.
Yeah, so I am almost at the end of season 4 in my rewatch, and so I'm almost into the new stuff of Breaking Bad. And it's
new for you.
New for me,
yeah,
right, yeah.
The
from
5-year-old.
my perspective, yes.
Yeah.
The 5th season of Breaking Bad. And it's a good TV show.
It's a very good TV show.
Yeah.
Really the 5th seasons, because just remember that those aired a full year apart, and first 8 episodes of season 5 and the second 8 episodes, they're two, they took a break in the writer's room. The episode 8 is 100% a season finale, so you've really got 2 mini seasons.
Okay.
It will be jarring if you don't remember that going in, is all I'm saying. But yeah,
right.
It's a good show. And I'm excited for you to watch Better Call Saul, because it's an even better show.
Yeah.
I want to talk about it, because it's so fucking good. And I think you're going to love Better Call Saul.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to that stuff.
But Breaking Bad's a good show.
Yes, it is.
I rewatched all of that, I think. I got the Blu-ray set last year and rewatched that. So last summer. It's a good show. But yeah, I saw a movie this weekend that I wanted to talk about briefly. I went to see Steven Soderbergh's new movie, Logan Lucky. And I'm a big Soderbergh fan. He had not, he quote-unquote retired from filmmaking in 2013, which really just meant he was going to go make a TV show for a couple years, which is the Cinemax show The Nick, which I still need to catch up on. But, before that point, he made movies every year. Mm-hmm. And I loved that, because just as a critic, I would go see those movies every year, every 6 months or something, and just even his most kind of off-kilter movies that didn't quite work, I find him such an interesting filmmaker, and he always brings such technical acumen to his films, and he has such an interesting eye for things. I just love Steven Soderbergh's movies, and Logan Lucky is the first one he's made since 2013, and it is so good, you guys. It is my initial tweet was, this might be my favorite movie of the summer, and I might amend that, but it would be up there. It is best described as sort of a heist movie in the vein of Soderbergh's own Ocean's 11, 12, 13. And they even make a joke midway through the movie. This is like Ocean's 7, 11, because it takes place in the American South. Basically, they're robbing a NASCAR track.
Okay.
And it's just this movie, I had the biggest fucking idiot smile on my face through this whole movie. On number one, you have the cast. It's Channing Tatum, Adam Driver, you've got Riley Coe, who played the lead in the Girlfriend Experience TV show, which is based on the Soderbergh movie, and she's great. There's so many other people in this movie that I'm now blanking on who all is in this film. Who's the 4th lead? Oh, fucking Daniel Craig. How do I forget it? He's the best part. Yeah. He plays a criminal who they use to basically... He's their demolitions expert, who is named Joe Bang. And it's Daniel Craig with bleached white hair and a ridiculous southern accent that sounds like Ernest P. Worrell. And I love it to death, and it's the most fun Daniel Craig has ever visibly had on screen. I'm sure he has fun doing the James Bond movies, just James Bond isn't all that happy a person in his movies.
It's a very dour sort of character in his version most of the time.
Yeah, and he looked really bored in Spectre. So watching him in this, it's just he clearly came to set every day so happy, and I love that about it. And Channing Tatum has such a great southern accent and the fucking goatee and everything, and he's really good. And Adam Driver has one of the best movie accents I've ever heard, in that everything he says through that accent is funny, but not in a way where it ever feels like they're mocking Southern people. It's just an affectation that is very funny. I love the whole character dynamics. It's a really, really entertaining heist movie in the same way as Soderbergh is maybe the best person who's ever lived at doing these kind of movies. If you compare the Ocean's movies and this and some of the other heist movies he's directed, of just the kind of guilt-free versions of these movies where you don't really have to worry about the morality of it, because they're always ripping off assholes, so who cares?
Right.
Does anyone really care if they rip off NASCAR?
No, not really.
Not really, yeah. So, like, they're going to make the money back. It's okay. But yeah, so, like, it's guilt-free. It's so fun. Like, the heist comes together in just a really clever, smart way on a scripting level. But it's always clear, and the movie is always, like, maybe a step ahead of you, but not in a way where you feel like you're being ripped off by the movie, just that you're excited to see where it goes next. But what really struck me the most about this film is that it also has a character-based undercurrent that I think is richer than a lot of heist movies of this sort, in that kind of Ocean's 11 vein, where like the relationship between Channing Tatum and his daughter in the movie, who they found a great movie kid to play his daughter. There are some great scenes with her. It's just very sweet and extremely well observed. The relationship between the Channing Tatum, Adam Driver, and Riley Coe characters, because they're all siblings. It's called Logan Lucky because their family is the Logans, and they have like bad luck and blah blah blah. But anyway, all of that I think is tremendously well observed, and just there's a lot of quiet moments in the movie that are very good and emotional. Even though it's also an extremely funny and upbeat movie in a lot of it, it does take time to like make these characters feel three-dimensional and lived in a way that Steven Soderbergh can do very casually at this point. He makes it look so easy, and I know it isn't, but he just, with his cinematography and his editing and his direction, of which he does all three under different pseudonyms, and then the script, this script seems like it's under a pseudonym, and it's probably written by Soderbergh's wife, but we don't know. Anyway, it's all extremely good, and I just cannot recommend this movie highly enough. I didn't even look how it did at the box office this weekend. There were other movies out, but this is a great film to end the summer on if you just want another really, really fun movie, because this is a crowd pleaser, and it's so good. And I cannot recommend it highly enough, if for no other reason than Daniel Craig in this movie is so screamingly funny. But everything about it is good.
Cool.
So, yeah, you should see that movie. It's made me want to dig out my Ocean's 11 DVDs and go watch those films again, because those were great. Back in the day. Yeah. It's been a long time since those came out.
Yeah, it has, hasn't it? Jesus.
Yeah, I think Ocean's 13 was 2007, so we're like 10 years past the end of that trilogy. But yeah, anyway, so with that in mind, I said, that was like maybe my favorite film of the summer. It made me think, I think this has been a really good movie summer.
Yeah.
Like, we've had a lot of good films. I haven't even caught up on some of the ones that have been out that I wanted to go see, like Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, which, to be fair, no one saw, so I'm not alone on that. And some other films that I would have liked to have checked out. But I wanted to count down really quick the 5 movies I thought were best from this summer.
Okay.
Or specifically favorite.
Right.
Like, best would be a different ranking. I think my favorite film of this summer was Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Okay.
It was the first movie of this summer. It is still my favorite that I think came out this summer. I actually just bought the Blu-ray today, and I don't usually do that with new movies anymore, but I really love this movie. It has grown on me over time. I saw it twice in the theaters. It might, at this point, be my favorite Marvel movie. It really would. I think it's got weaknesses here and there that are, frankly, very common weaknesses for Marvel movies, but the strengths in terms of character and style and how it develops its themes cinematically, I think it's the best version of that Marvel has ever done, and maybe by a pretty wide margin if you look at, I think, how powerful the closing scene of that movie is, and that this is a movie that closes with a CGI tear running down a CGI raccoon's face, and I think it's one of the most effective emotional moments in the genre to date. And that's ridiculous, and it's part of why I love this movie. Like, I listen to the soundtrack to this movie all the time. I think it uses music in the most beautiful, synesthetic way. I just love the shit out of this movie, and I think... and I wasn't even necessarily the biggest fan in the world of Guardians of the Galaxy 1, so this one caught me off guard, and it is... When I think back over the summer and what movies have stuck with me, this one really has, to a degree that surprised me. So... Okay. Yeah. Number 2 is Logan Lucky, which I just talked about. Because, goddamn, Soderbergh did a Southern Heist movie. I love it. 3 is Wonder Woman, because it's a great movie.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman, we should say, I think a piece of cool news, just broke a 15-year-old record for highest grossing domestic superhero first movie.
Yeah, debut,
which was a record still held all these years by Sam Raimi's Spider-Man.
Yeah, I think people sometimes forget how wildly successful the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies were.
Yeah, all of them set the opening weekend record as they were coming out. Not Spider-Man 2 because it came out on a Wednesday and it was a weird thing, but 1 and 3 did, and they all were huge grossers around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just gives a lot of context to why Sony just cannot let it go.
Yes.
Can't let Spider-Man go.
Because they probably still have some of that money.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but Wonder Woman was such an astounding success. I mean, kind of coming out of left field in that DC had some real stinkers before then.
Oh, yeah.
And is going to have some real stinkers coming up.
Almost certainly.
But Patty Jenkins directed this so confidently, so beautifully, with such a sense of purpose. Gal Gadot I'm hearing her name is actually pronounced Gal Gadot, but I don't actually know anything about Israeli, so...
Me neither.
Yeah, but I'll just say Gal Gadot, because that's how I know it. But it's a star-making performance. She is wonderful. I cannot wait to see what she does, not just in future Wonder Woman performances, but as an actress. Chris Pine doing, I think, maybe career best work, that or Hell or High Water in that film. Great sense of place and style and theme. I love that movie. Number 4 would be Baby Driver, Edgar Wright's film, which is another one that has got a couple of little issues, but when that movie is working, and it is that synergy between the music and the visuals and the editing and the propulsive nature of this film, oh man, there's never been anything quite like it, and it is just a pure joy. And if for no other reason than the scene where John Hamm is singing the song on the iPad very menacingly towards the title character, I will always remember that scene and some others. It is a great little movie, and I loved it. And 5 would be Dunkirk, the Chris Nolan movie, which was the spectacle of the summer and a very, very good movie. Not to me maybe as emotionally propulsive as some of these other films, but what a technical masterpiece. And and I think an actual evolution for Nolan in a lot of ways, and how it pairs down to kind of some of his strongest attributes as a director. It's only a 100-minute movie. It's by far his shortest film since his 1-hour student film Following. So yeah, those would be my top 5. There were other good ones this summer, like Spider-Man Homecoming, which was a lot of fun, but I think a lot more lightweight maybe than these 5 films.
Sure.
But yeah, I've enjoyed this summer at the movies a lot, and I like that list there. You've got you got a passion project, 2 of those. You got 2 superhero movies that turned out very good, and then Soderbergh coming back and just doing his thing. And yeah, I've enjoyed this summer at the movies more than the last few.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. All right, so you want to go ahead and talk some news?
What's going on in the news, Jonathan?
All right. The Super NES Classic pre-order clusterfuck of 2017.
What is the clusterfuck? What are you talking about? Nintendo assured us that it was going to go better this time. Like, they said, no, like, we're going to make more. We've learned from this experience, Jonathan. We're going to make more of these and make them more readily available, pre-orders and everything. It's going to be great. It's going to be perfect. I mean, they fucked it up once, but the great thing about making mistakes is that you can learn from them.
They did not.
Oh, no.
Okay, so I witnessed this all in real time, kind of by accident. I was not necessarily sitting down to I am going to get one of these hardcore. And I feel bad for the people who were, because you could be the most hardcore Super NES seeker in the world, and you probably still didn't get one of these.
Yeah.
Almost certainly didn't get one of these. So last night, I was up late playing Sonic Mania, and as I took a break, I saw on Twitter that it had gone up on Best Buy briefly. And so I checked, and it was already out. And it had been on Best Buy for about 15 minutes, randomly at 1 in the morning our time.
Uh-huh.
So that was weird.
Yeah.
That they did that.
Because that's the best time to make pre-orders available, is in the dead of night. Because I should say, my experience of that was, that was literally, right when I was about to fall asleep. It was, was in bed, and I was like, I'm going to plug my phone into my charger. I was look at Twitter, see if there's anything weird going on, and saw that happening on Twitter, and just laughed myself to sleep. It's you fucked it up again!
Yep. So that happened. Then at around, and I also saw this unfold later because taking care of an extra dog, and they've been kind of keeping me up a little bit, but I was checking Reddit at 3 in the morning, the Nintendo Reddit, and something weird happened here, where it also went up on Amazon very briefly. This was the weirdest by far. It did not go up as the Super NES Classic on Amazon. Right, yeah. It went up on a completely different page with a very mysterious title that people online detectives solved the puzzle together to figure out this was the Super NES Classic. Amazon had no limits on orders, so people could order 50 of these things. And almost certainly all of those went to scalpers, as with all the pre-orders. Very few actual people are getting this console.
Yeah, and one of the important details of that, of the weird second page thing, is that if you were someone that had that on your watch list or whatever on Amazon, you wouldn't have been alerted when it became available, which you would have normally when that page updated. Instead, it went to this weird cryptic other page.
And I should say, I had alerts set up on Best Buy, Amazon, GameStop, Target, Walmart. All of them eventually went up today. Not a single one sent an alert or has sent me an alert. That's a complete lie on all of their parts. That is not a thing they actually do. It's just to get your email address. Don't do it anymore. It's a lie. Anyway, so that was the wee hours of the morning. Amazon and Best Buy, the two biggest...
the wee hours of the
morning. That was not an intentional...
It's Nintendo.
Not an intentional pun in this case.
That was a good one, Jonathan.
Okay, the Wii is not on my mind at the moment, but yes. So that was the small hours of the morning, we'll say. And that was the prelude to today, where we got up And the first thing I should say, because I want to come back to this, is Nintendo had unembargoed a bunch of press coverage of the Super NES Classic this morning. So all the gaming sites, gaming channels on YouTube had videos and articles about the features and the UI and all this stuff to get us all hyped for something that we would, 99.9% of people wanting to get one, will never lay eyes on. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a really gross thing Nintendo did with the gaming press, and the gaming press took part in, and I want to talk about that later.
Sure.
But anyway, so that was the prelude to it, and then we started hearing word that the pre-orders were going to start to go live at 11 a.m. our time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, something like that. So it just so happened that while this was going on, I had taken my dog to the groomer, and our groomer is a little further away, so I just decided to go to a restaurant and have some lunch and work on my computer, get stuff ready for this podcast while I was waiting for my dog to get groomed.
Right.
And because she had so much hair in her face, she couldn't see it because she's a shaggy dog and that happens. So anyway, we can see her eyes again now, and it's great. She didn't seem to really care because I don't think dogs use their eyes as much as we do. But sure. Anyway, while I was sitting there waiting, it seemed like this was going on. So I'm like, fuck it. I'm not doing anything else intensive right now. I'm going to see if I can get a Super NES Classic. Because one, I really do want one of these. I'd like to have it. It looks really cool. I also think it would be useful for some of the Let's Play stuff we have going on. But anyway, so the first one to go up was Walmart. And I had the Walmart page up. I'd had it up for half an hour. I was refreshing. I saw the tweet come up because I had tweets from a couple of sources that I know are reliable, like Auto come up on my phone as soon as they were published. And so it told me, okay, and I refreshed Walmart. It was right there. I put it in my cart, checked out, and it just broke down and was gone. And it was gone. And I looked online, and that was everyone's experience. It was up for less than a minute on Walmart. So that was weird.
Okay, yeah.
GameStop, meanwhile, completely crashed.
Right.
So, I don't know. They were in and out all day. GameStop was also doing their tremendously gross thing where they and their subsidiary ThinkGeek were mostly selling these in way overpriced bundles. So, GameStop is basically legally scalping systems, and it's disgusting that Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo allow them to do it.
Right, yeah.
They just need to cut them off. That's not okay. And we can talk about that more later, but it's not okay. Anyway, there was a trickle with that, but GameStop was mostly out of commission. Best Buy Canada put it up. Best Buy Canada does not ship out of country, so that was not an option for us. But I did monitor it to see, well, how fast are the Canadian ones going? Also lasted less than a minute. Target went up and was a complete clusterfuck because you could add it to your cart and get all the way to checkout, and then the site would crash, and you'd have to go check your orders, and it wouldn't be there. And that was also flitting in and out all day, and there was no reliable way to tell when they actually had systems.
Yeah, and that's the most stressful thing is when it's right at that moment of checkout that the site goes down and you have no idea if you actually ordered it or not. You're like, oh, I actually did. Is this going to come back and I somehow ordered 100 of these things and I'm in severe financial debt? That always stresses me out. I hate it when online checkout pages freak out because you have my credit card information already and I do not want to deal with a freak out on that.
Yeah. The last retailer standing that we knew was going to sell these things was Toys R Us, and they just tweeted, we're not bothering with pre-orders. So that takes care of all the places that you could buy a Super NES Classic from. In total, less than 20 minutes of time across the last 24 hours that you could have actually pre-ordered one of these. The vast majority probably went to bots and to scalpers because of how fast it happened. And if you look at eBay listings, that seems to bear out. Yeah. So this was pretty disgusting. And it's not just frustrating, it's disgusting. It's Nintendo treating their fans like crap, frankly. Because, and this is where I need to go back to the thing about the press coverage this morning. Because they clearly did that knowing they were going to have the pre-orders up today. But if they know how many they've made. They know how many they've allocated. And the other thing is, you could also pre-order these in person at a GameStop store, I heard. But I also looked at some of these because I want to see, well, how many were they allowing? And it was max 7 or 8 systems. So this is absolutely no different than the NES Classic last year. Maybe even worse. People are getting very few. They have not produced the hundreds of thousands of these. They have not produced the millions. If they've produced more than the hundreds for North America, that would frankly be surprising at this point. So they have barely produced these, and they decided to do this ad blitz today in conjunction with all these gaming websites. So you got all hyped up about it and saw it was really cool, but it also frankly felt like a show of confidence. Oh, Nintendo's showing this thing off. maybe they really do have their shit together with these pre-orders. The Best Buy and Amazon thing last night was weird, but Amazon is never reliable for pre-ordering systems or anything like that. So maybe we can write that off. And the Best Buy thing, maybe they'll come back up. No, it was the worst case scenario, absolutely. Again, what they've done is created a really expensive third-party market where people are going to get ripped off, and most of these are never going to wind up in the hands of people who actually want to play them. And all of that, and then you look at things like, how disgusting GameStop was being, how utterly inept every retailer was in this, and how there was no leadership from Nintendo on this. This is a clusterfuck, and Nintendo is and should be better than this.
Yeah, especially because it made the joke at the top of this podcast, but it's legitimately true. This already happened once a year ago. It has not even quite a year ago. We've already been fucking through this with the Classic Edition stuff from Nintendo, and they said that they had learned from this, and clearly they didn't, because it's they didn't make it clearly public when they were going to make pre-orders available, which Nintendo would have had the power to do that. That's not necessarily uncommon for that information to be out there if they know it's going to be a high demand, limited run sort of item. You need to be communicative with your audience and your fans and your consumers when you're doing a release like this that you're going to make thousands of them or whatever, and then that's going to be it. And once they've made all these Super Nintendo Classic Editions, like they've said, it's not going to be a continuous item. It's not the Nintendo Switch. It's not their ongoing sort of console that they're going to support. It's this one and done kind of thing. And it is absurd when you have this one and done thing and you utterly fuck it.
Yeah, and also they're not marketing it that way. And it's the same with the NES Classic. They are not publicly talking about these things in any way, shape, or form as a limited release item. That's what they clearly are. That is how they are treating them from a supply and demand level, as a extremely limited edition run. But that is not how they're marketing them. Limited edition runs do not get a press blitz from the gaming press. And I would, if I were running Kotaku or Polygon or Game Explain or any of the channels I saw publishing stuff on this today, I would have said, our thing on this is contingent on you telling us, is this a limited run or not? Because that's a legitimate part of this story. And even if it's no comment, that has to be a part of the stuff we run. Because if you're lying to your customers, we don't want to be complicit in that. And sadly, I think a lot of the gaming press is complicit in that when they publish 5 different stories about this stuff as coverage for something that is kind of a non-starter. Very few people are ever going to own these.
Yeah.
So all of that is just immensely frustrating. Nintendo can't even get their story straight on what kind of run these things are. And it's just so bizarre. There is no good... I keep hearing, yeah, but look at all the free hype they're getting. They're Nintendo. They've been around forever. They will be around forever. They don't need any more hype. They're fine.
Also, what good does the free hype get them if they sell every single unit that they produce? You're not getting anything extra out of that. No. That's economically speaking, that is wasted time and effort that you have just made because you're not getting any actual monetary value from it because you're not producing enough units to supply the demand.
Go Occam's razor on this. Simplest explanation. You make more stuff, you get more money on this. There were tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people probably today ready to give out their credit cards and give Nintendo money for this, and all of that is left on the table. So it's just shitty business strategy, and I don't want to hear anymore how it's a good, legitimate business strategy. It's just ineptitude, but it's also ineptitude at this point that feels somewhat insidious in how none of the different arms are talking to each other.
Yeah. It is one of the several instances with Nintendo that you get of you hear what they say and you see what they do and you get this sense every once in a while that's does Nintendo not realize it's this massive international company? It feels like Nintendo has this there's a core at Nintendo that has this very insular oh no, we're this, we're a very successful, but we are a Japanese company that makes products for the Japanese market that happens to also be able to sell on a worldwide market, but it's they don't carry themselves they're a big international player when that's what you are, and you need to realize that. And that's what leads to if this was just a limited edition thing for the Japanese market, you just had your Super Famicom Classic, that would make sense. There's lots of weird limited edition sort of exclusive otaku merchandise in Japan. That's how part of that market functions. That's not how it functions anywhere else though. And so you just completely poison the entire market and poison your consumer base and your fan base when you treat them like this.
Yeah, it's hot bullshit. And there is no good explanation for it. If they did not want to, or felt like they could not put in the resources to make enough of these to sell to their customers, then they should never have announced it. They should never have gotten it into development. It shouldn't be a product.
Right.
End of story. End of story. That's it. That's all there is to it. I don't want to hear any more of the think pieces about, well, actually, it's not going to be a huge profit driver because, but not our problem.
Yeah.
I don't really care what their reasons are. And yeah, and again, I do think it's probably a legitimate thing that to say that the Nintendo Switch has not been a clusterfuck in terms of supply and demand. Like, it's actually been pretty reasonable for a thing selling as well as it has. Yeah. And it's probable that has limited their supply chain in terms of manufacturing these. But that's their problem, not ours. And if that's the case,
that just means they should have waited.
Yes,
wait a year until your Switch supply, demand is not as constrained as it is right now.
Yeah.
And then you divert your resources to making the Super NES Classic instead of trying to do this NES Classic, then the Nintendo Switch, and then the Super Nintendo Classic back to back to back.
Yeah.
If your fucking factory space could not supply what you needed there, then don't fucking do it.
Because I'll tell you, if Nintendo came out tomorrow and said, we're delaying this until February of 2018 or something so we can make more units, and we're going to take pre-orders now and we're going to manufacture on-demand pre-orders or something like that, no one on earth would be mad about that.
Yeah.
It would sell better, it would be better for their image, people would be happy, it would feel like Nintendo was listening and communicative, but no. And it is sadly emblematic of something Nintendo does way too often these days. And when you pair this with the fact that they have been utterly silent about Virtual Console on the Nintendo Switch, it's just extra frustrating. Because that's one of the things is that, you can play a lot of these games on the Wii U and the 3DS, but those are, the 3DS is still a current, supported console. The Wii U is not. A lot of people have put it away for their Nintendo Switch. And the Nintendo Switch has no Virtual Console on the horizon, and the Super NES Classic has a bunch of games on it that have not been on those services before,
right.
Up to and including something like Star Fox 2, which is an unreleased game. So there's a lot of things people are, justifiably excited for here, including that the product looks like it's really refined their Virtual Console approach, which how it uses save states and rewinds and borders and all this stuff. It doesn't have to be tied to this console. They could announce tomorrow, we're going to release for $80 the Super NES Classic Switch Edition, and it's a cartridge with all of them on it, and it would sell like hotcakes, and they could also deliver it because it's a cartridge.
Yeah, which would also make this sort of limited edition hardware version make a lot more sense.
Yes.
If there was a software thing that's these games are available to anyone through digital downloads on our Switch and 3DS storefronts or whatever. But also, as this limited edition run, we have made these really nice premium boxes that have all the games in there, and that have there's replica controllers and all this stuff, and you can buy this for $80, and it's going to be this premium holiday item. I think that it would still be incredibly frustrating if all of these sort of supply issues existed, but I think it would be more excusable if there was some other ways to get the games.
Yeah, if you just could go to the eShop on September 29th and buy a package that had all of them.
Yeah.
That would be, no one would be complaining about all of this, or at least not as much, because the worst case scenario is you can play them on their cool Switch console.
Right.
This is the worst part of all of it, is none of this should be hard. Not an iota of this should be difficult. Not in the sense of mass production and all that, but there are ways around every one of these difficulties that are not, they don't even take creative thinking. Put them on your flagship console. Whoever thought of that?
Yeah, do the thing you've been doing since 2006 with the Wii on your 2017 console.
Yeah. Make an announced date and time for pre-orders,
Right.
Give yourself enough lead time to create enough for retail, all of these things. I even suggested this on Twitter. To me, I think the best way to do these, if these are really only ever going to be a limited supply thing, is sell them through Nintendo.com and have a 1-week pre-order period, and you go there and you give them $80, and with that, they promise that they will manufacture and send you one around the time, and there can be tiers, the first 10,000 go out on this date, the next 10,000 on this date. That is a common business strategy.
Yeah.
That would be perfectly, you could do that. Again, you might get a lot of orders and have to backdate some of them, but that would be a way to know, okay, this is the exact demand. And the only argument against that would be, well, then they're not going to be on store shelves. But hey, I got a surprise for all you guys. They're not going to be on store shelves.
Yeah.
You will never see one of these on a store shelf. And that is...
Unless the store shelf is the back alley on a trash can while you're talking to Gary in his fucking black trench coat.
Yeah. So, it's disrespectful to fans. And there's a lot of people to play here. Again, it is disgusting that all of the game companies are letting GameStop do what they do with these sales and the bundling stuff, because it's really hostile to consumers. And I mean, GameStop it's a dead company walking, and I cannot wait for them to shut down. But, the game companies have leverage over them, and they could say, stop it or you don't get our console, and that'd be it. GameStop has no leverage the other way around. I'm sorry, So, yeah, I'm mad about this. It's just annoying.
Yeah.
Especially when, again, they hype it up and, hey, Nintendo once again made a really cool product because they're good at that.
Yeah.
Now, why will you not let us give you our fucking money? Mm-hmm. It feels like they're gaslighting all of us.
Right, yeah.
Like, I feel sometimes insane. Like, all I want to do is do a capitalist transaction with you, and you won't let me. And it's weird.
Yeah.
Because, if someone else wanted to give me $80, I'd take it. Patreon.com/weeklystuffpodcast.
Yes. Yeah. Like, we should just make a special Super NES edition version of, for patrons. $80. Yeah. And we do our damnedest to try to find a Super NES classic for you.
No one needs to pay us $80 on our Patreon. No. Please don't do that. That's.
I mean, if you want to do it, you can do it.
We got our $5 tier, for $10 tier. They're good.
You're not going to turn it down.
Anyway, let's talk about some news, and we're going to go into some movie news next.
Okay.
Because I think they're kind of funny pieces of movie news, and it'll even us out here.
All right.
All right. First off. This broke in Variety, I believe, that Disney is developing a Obi-Wan Kenobi standalone Star Wars movie.
Yes.
With writer-director Steven Daldry, who would be best known for a bunch of plays he has done in Britain and America. A very acclaimed theater director. He has made a couple of movies, too, that have not been super acclaimed. Kate Winslet won her Oscar for one of his movies. The Reader, I think, is what it is. But, a very talented stage director. He's made 3 or 4 movies. So kind of interesting. I would not have expected that name to come up in relationship to this, but it's an interesting choice.
Yeah.
And not a lot of other details yet. There's been enough chatter over the years of they're making Star Wars movies again. Ewan McGregor is still out there.
Yeah.
Ewan McGregor is still awesome. Ewan McGregor is very publicly open to doing more Obi-Wan Kenobi, so I think we can all assume this would be between episodes 3 and 4.
Right.
And if not, I'm not sure why they'd do it.
Yeah, and that is actually one of the things that feels weird about the announcement is I feel like surely you would have just lined that up, right? And just said, we're doing an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie with Ewan McGregor.
This wasn't an announcement. This was a report in the trade. Okay. So, this is probably something that was going to leak, and Disney gave them some information so they could control part of the story.
Okay.
Because I would imagine, I think Disney in an ideal world would have Ewan McGregor sign the dotted line and then announce it, but who knows?
Yeah, because to me, that's that's a huge part of the appeal of an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie is that he was the best part of the prequels. Ewan McGregor was awesome as Obi-Wan, and obviously was sort of saddled with 2 very bad movies and 1 movie that is, I think, overall good but has a lot of bad stuff in it. And it would be awesome to just see him be able to sort of lead a movie on his own, something that would be set in between episode 3 and 4, where there's been a lot of stuff that's kind of hypothesized about what would Obi-Wan do. I think there's an interesting plot there of him being in Tatooine, kind of trying to look over Luke, and then something from his past comes back up that he has to deal with. There's a huge amount of potential there with that.
Well, and assuming that's what it's going to be, that's why I kind of like Steven Daldry, that they didn't get a big, blockbuster director, but
right.
Because this would I would want this to be a lower budget, smaller, more intimate character piece, and it feels like you hire a guy like Steven Daldry, hopefully that's the direction you're going in.
Yeah.
So, this is an announcement overall I would be excited about, just with the, you have to pull back and say, well, we don't know all the details yet. If what we assume comes to fruition, that sounds like a much better idea for a Star Wars spinoff than some of the other stuff they've done, are doing, will do.
Yeah.
Because, again, it's kind of basic Obi-Wan Kenobi, but when you've got Ewan McGregor out there, and you've got this convenient 20-year time jump where you could tell a lot of interesting little stories, kind of, to me, it's why not?
Yeah, it's one of the sort of ideas for a Star Wars spinoff movie when they sort of announced that they were going to do some of these that, to me, seemed like if you're going to do one that is bringing back an old character as opposed to something like Rogue One that is basically original. As far as original in Star Wars exists for, we are the people who got the Death Star plans. But anyways, if you're going to pull back an old character, instead of doing a fucking young Han Solo movie or a Boba Fett movie or whatever, do an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie with Ewan McGregor, like, while he's still young enough to, like, really easily fit in that time period and still wants to do it.
Yeah. So, if that's what it turns out to be, this is a Star Wars movie I will be happily excited to watch.
Yeah.
But, yeah. And I think it's good to be on edge on a lot of this, given the clusterfuck that has been the Han Solo production and some of the stuff with Rogue One, but who knows? We'll see how it all goes down. I like the idea of this. Again, I agree, like... And probably Disney would agree. It would be best if this announcement had been, Stephen Daldry, Obi-Wan Kenobi movie starring Ewan McGregor, set in blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And that's what we're going to make. But, we'll hear more. And if it's not that, I don't understand the idea.
Yeah, because, like, if it is something of, like, Obi-Wan Kenobi pre-Episode 1 or something, it's like, why would you make that?
Yeah,
Who wants to watch that?
I mean, there is, like, some extended lore stuff with, like, little things about his childhood, but not enough to build a movie around.
And overall, not something that would seem that interesting to me.
Because especially part of his appeal in Episode 1 is that, like, you're contrasting him with Anakin. Obi-Wan is a guy who's come up through the Jedi system. You know, he's been doing this his whole life. He's a professional Padawan who becomes a master over the course of that movie. I do think Obi-Wan's arc over the course of those 3 movies is by far the best thing about them. So yeah, there's no reason to go back and do more revisionism on that. Because also, Ewan McGregor was a really young dude in Episode 1.
Yes.
So we've seen young Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
And I would like to see, he matured so much over those 6 years in those 3 movies. Do another one 10, 15 years later, I'd like to see, because I think he's continued to mature as an actor. I love Ewan McGregor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And see what get him to grow the beard back out. Because I bet, at this age, he could grow an even better beard.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah. Anyway, so that's that. In these reports, we also heard that a Jabba the Hutt movie is also something being discussed. I think people don't take that as literally. Like, that is in the same category as the Boba Fett movie, which... The Boba Fett movie, to be fair, everyone treats that as like just an open, they're making a Boba Fett movie. That's never been announced. There's never been hard reporting on that. It sounds like it's kind of an open secret that that's what Josh Trank was working on before he got fired because Fantastic Four was a clusterfuck.
Oh, yeah.
And they realized this guy seems kind of unstable. But, there's really been no forward momentum with that. But it does sound like that goes into the same category as like the Boba Fett thing, that they might be considering a Jabba the Hutt movie. And that overall trend... Han Solo, Jabba the Hutt, Boba Fett, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Do you guys have no creative bones in your bodies? Like, is there really no better idea for a Star Wars spin-off?
I've got one! A Chewbacca movie.
Wow.
I got another one! A Yoda movie.
Wow.
I've got a Darth Maul movie. He was only in one of them.
I'd actually watch that.
Yeah, that would be a way better one.
Yeah, like a completely silent film. Get Genndy Tartakovsky to do it in the style of like Samurai Jack or the Clone Wars.
Okay, fuck yeah.
I'd watch that.
Yes.
Not going to happen.
No.
I'd watch that.
No,
it's just like...
I got another one. Padme prequel. While she was still Queen of Naboo. Padme the prequel.
Because that's everyone's favorite part of The Phantom Menace.
Yeah,
No, I don't know. Like, a Yoda movie is another thing listed in the Variety report that they are considering. It's just all of it. It's like, yes, these are popular characters. Has no one stopped to ask themselves, is there actually a story with any of these people? Because who knows? The Han Solo thing sounds like it's been a disaster. We'll see if it's any good when it comes out. But, like, Star Wars is such a big canvas to paint on. I don't know why again, Obi-Wan Kenobi makes sense for all the reasons we listed. Jabba the Hutt does not need his own movie.
Like, what would that even be? What is that movie?
I don't know.
I mean, the only thing I could think is, like, it's a crime movie, like, starring a character that is close to Jabba the Hutt. Like, I don't know, Salacious Crumb, the movie. Finally, the movie we've been waiting for since Return of the Jedi, Salacious Crumb starring in Salacious Crumb, the movie.
I want them to get Beat Takeshi over to the U.S. to direct a Yakuza Jabba the Hutt movie where basically Jabba the Hutt is not the main character because that could never work.
No.
But like just have some random like Japanese guy being like an underling in the Hutt family organization and like trying to rise to the top, and it's a gritty R-rated Yakuza. He can do it in Japanese. That's fine.
I mean, really, all you need to do is take the movie Outrage and then just put some CGI Jabba the Hutt kind of characters in the background and like CGI laser bolts instead of bullets. And that's
the dentist drill scene is way different.
Yes, it's a lightsaber. Yeah.
Anyway.
Don't make a Jabba the Hutt movie. It's such a bad idea.
None of this is as bad an idea as our next movie we're going to talk about. Which is right before we went on air, The Hollywood Reporter broke a story that DC/Warner Brothers are in the works on a Joker prequel movie that will be co-written by Todd Phillips, directed by Todd Phillips, also co-written by Scott Silver, who's done some good stuff. Todd Phillips is probably most famous as the director of the Hangover trilogy. He also did Old School back in the day. He's done comedy. He's a comedy director, and a good one. I like his movies. But so all of that Joker prequel movie. Martin Scorsese might be tied to it as an executive producer. That was by far the most baffling thing in the report, and they said that's far from being like a set thing. So I would not take that as gospel. My hope is that that's like a game of telephone where someone said Zack Snyder and they heard Martin Scorsese because they were drunk or something. I don't know.
They were in the middle of watching Wolf of Wall Street on Netflix, and they had Scorsese on the brain.
Yeah. They've also this is not going to be tied to the rest of the DC continuity, ergo this will not be about the Jared Leto Joker.
Okay.
The idea is that it would be set in the 1980s, and this would be the beginning of a start of a subcategory of DC movies that would not be tied to the main continuity and would be lower budget projects. Okay.
Young Joker, a DC Comics story.
Every piece of this is stupid. What's the stupidest piece?
Making a Joker origin movie.
Yeah.
Just flat out that. Making a movie starring the Joker as the protagonist character. Barred just that. Also, trying to do an origin movie for the Joker. Both of those things combined, don't.
Yeah,
is my advice on that one.
I mean, what makes the Joker more scary than telling us everything about him? Right?
Yeah. No. I mean, if you know everything about a character, that's what makes them very menacing. Is once you've cast off all the shadows and all the mystery around them. It's like, oh yeah, you're just. Jack, and you fell into the vat, and it's like, this is just who you are, and it's just that. It's just straight that. And also, there's nothing more interesting than the Joker sans Batman, because, of course, the Batman does nothing to contextualize and make the Joker the Joker.
It's why I cannot wait for the Coen brothers to come back and do their 3-part trilogy about Anton Chigurh before the events of No Country for Old Men.
I mean, we really need to fill in those dots, I think, to make him a compelling character.
And don't come at us with the Killing Joke. The whole point of the fucking Killing Joke is that it's probably not true.
Yeah.
And it all feels like Alan Moore kind of doing a satire of that kind of story, not a legitimate attempt to say, here's exactly who the Joker was. Also, it's a 40-page comic. Yeah. And we've already seen some pretty talented people crash hard on the rocks of that story.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to tell you, I don't think Todd Phillips is more up to the task than the people who made Batman the Animated Series.
Right.
So, anyway. Yeah, no. It's so dumb. You from every angle you just said, the Joker should not be headlining a movie. And to me, it's also this stinks of such rancid desperation.
Uh-huh.
It's you haven't even gotten Justice League in order. You've hired 3 people for the Flash movie. You can't get your main heroes' movies together. And you are DC. You have hundreds of heroes you could make movies about. For some reason, you're prioritizing Black Adam or something. I don't know. And Cyborg.
That's because The Rock wants to be Black Adam.
Yeah,
that's the only reason they ever talk about it.
Yeah. But now you're just jumping ahead to the fucking Joker prequel movie? At least when Sony started talking about their Venom movie, they'd done 10 years of Spider-Man movies.
Right.
And were really floundering and trying to figure out what to do. And it doesn't make it a good idea, but it makes it... You understand how they got there.
Sure, yeah.
This is the dumbest fucking thing. And it's like a perpetual reminder that everyone with a dick at Warner Brothers or DC is really bad at their jobs right now. And it's everyone with a dick because Patty Jenkins made Wonder Woman and it was great.
Yeah.
But we can take everyone else out of the fucking equation.
Yeah, it's also just, the other thing is you are, purportedly trying to build up this DC cinematic universe in the style of the Marvel cinematic universe to get that, cinematic universe money or whatever. And so then one of the first things you're doing after you have really fucked things out of the gate and then kind of, salvaged something in this Wonder Woman movie that is set, 100 years before everything else. It's salvage is maybe a bit much. But what you're starting to maybe get a best foot forward with that shit, and then immediately, and now we're going to make a movie that is in a totally different continuity.
Yeah,
why? What?
Yeah, I mean, imagine if Marvel tomorrow just announced a standalone, I don't know, Doctor Doom movie or something. And he had not with any other characters. And it's not tied to the universe, but we're making a standalone Doctor Doom movie. Yeah. We'd be like, well, I'm glad you got the rights to Doctor Doom. That seems like a weird way to use him.
Yeah.
Right? It's all so bizarre. And that whole thing of, now we're going to start making the sub-continuity movies. Guys, mainstream audiences can't figure this shit out anyway. Most people, I don't think, are even aware Superman and Iron Man aren't in the same universe. So, like,
Fair enough, yeah.
Maybe start with that. Maybe start with figuring out your brand identity, because you haven't yet.
Yeah.
And then you can play your fun games. As I said on Twitter, the only way this works for me is if this is a Hangover reunion and Zach Galifianakis plays the Joker and basically reprises his role as the Joker from the Lego Batman movie, and it is a comedy making fun of the idea of a Joker origin story. I would watch that.
Sure, yeah.
That's almost certainly not what this will be.
No.
I don't think Martin Scorsese is executive producing that. The whole thing, I don't get it. I don't understand any of the business decisions they're making. It is such a haphazard thing they're doing. I mean, we don't even know who Batman's going to be after this next movie.
Right.
So, yeah, it's bizarre. It's very bizarre.
Yeah. This is one in a long, long line of weird choices that Warner Brothers has been making about their DC Comics movies.
Anyway, someone said on Twitter today, they had like a thread like, what's the movie that makes you angriest that you had to watch or something like that? And I said Suicide Squad. It's what came to mind. That is the movie I hate most that I have ever paid to see. And... I don't trust these people to do the Joker well anymore.
Sure, yeah.
I mean, one last point. So much of this that they're spiraling out of is not just because of Marvel's success, but because Chris Nolan made 3 very successful Batman movies.
Right.
And it feels like with each step forward they take after the Chris Nolan Batman movies, it feels to me like nobody at Warner Brothers saw those films or understood what made them good.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how you look at the success of The Dark Knight and what Heath Ledger did in that film and Chris Nolan did with Heath Ledger in that film, and you think the answer to new stories is we need to figure out the origin of that character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I really don't understand how that is anyone's impulse. So, very bizarre. I'm looking forward to Wonder Woman 2, other than that.
Sure, yeah.
And maybe her scenes in Justice League.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe someone will make a supercut on YouTube.
Yes.
Like, there you go, just the Wonder Woman parts of Justice League.
If the local theater sold a ticket that was just, we've cut Justice League down to just her scenes, it's 40 minutes long, that's the one I would go pay to see.
Yeah. I want all of her scenes, and then I just want to see all the Jeremy Irons Alfred scenes just to see if he ever breaks out of that like one character shtick that he had in Batman v Superman.
Let's talk some video game news, Sean.
So what's going on in the world of video games? We've been talking about news for a while, or movie news for a while.
Yeah, so Gamescom was this week.
Yes, it was.
And you wanted to talk about
Germany.
This because there really wasn't anything out of Gamescom.
Yeah, so like Gamescom is a show that like used to be like like over 10 years ago because Gamescom is the like it's European focused. It is held in Germany, so it's focused for the European market, but it's a big, huge games conference.
I mean, Angela Merkel goes there every year.
I mean, she like presides over the thing,
which is crazy.
There,
I'm not joking.
She really is. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I mean, she's really into Counter-Strike. It's the whole thing. Anyways,
that's the joke.
Yeah, but all the European press, games press are obviously there, but then most sort of major American news outlets also go to Gamescom and cover it. But over the past 5 to 10 years or so, like Gamescom has slowly sort of started to dwindle to the point where now Sony doesn't have any like concerted presence there at all. Like they used to have like small press conferences. Now Sony has no press like it's so far away from having a press conference. Nintendo obviously is like completely out of the business of doing press conferences, but they're not really there in a huge concerted presence either. But Microsoft has still been holding on to that like Gamescom slot for a while. And this year they did have I didn't watch it because you should watch it, but it was like a 90-minute long press conference basically, obviously because they're launching the Xbox One X in the fall this year, and so they, I guess theoretically they would have something to talk about because also Microsoft has so many holes in their story right now that they need to fill up with like first party games and like really pitch the Xbox One X I think more effectively than they did at E3, because at E3 it's like they had a good opening with it and then kind of forgot to ever mention it for the entire press conference till the very end, to the point where you forgot, oh right, I guess some of these games must be running on Xbox One X. I forgot that was a thing that they already announced. And so they had a lot of stuff on their plate that they needed to sort of get across, and they showed a Forza trailer.
They're making a Minecraft themed Xbox One S.
Yeah, there you go. So if you don't want the new one, you can get the old one.
You can get a pink Xbox One controller that's a Minecraft pig.
They announced that you could pre-order the limited version, launch version of the Xbox One X called the Project Scorpio Edition.
And you know what? Shout out to Microsoft. Exactly how you do pre-orders.
Sure,
they announced it.
Yeah.
They went up to retailers. There was a perfectly reasonable window. If you wanted to get one, you could probably get one. And it's a pretty cool launch day edition they've put together. The Project Scorpio edition doesn't cost any more.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with the Xbox One launch day. So, I'm not getting one of these, at least yet, but kudos to them on all that. They did it perfectly.
Yeah, and I just really like the idea that there's someone on the Xbox team that fought this fight of fine, you guys can call it the fucking Xbox One X. Fine, I will give it up. But I've been telling you the whole time that we should have just launched it as the Xbox One Scorpio. People would have loved it. It was a great project name. We should have just done it. And now that the internet knows our stupid name, now I have enough, ammo in this argument to say, we're at least going to do the fucking day one version called the Project Scorpio version because you guys were fucking wrong and it's too late to change it now.
Sean, I really want, a mini-series written and directed by you of different people in corporate environments, standing on a soapbox for very weird things.
Very specific things that they feel very strongly about.
This, your Twin Peaks guy at Showtime.
Yes.
You've had a lot of these, and I want to see their stories.
It is one of my fantasies because it's the thing about capitalism that you forget is that there are individual people that run all these companies that do hold some personal sway. And I guess I am taken by this fantasy of the corporate businessman who has the one passion deep in his cold, money vaulted heart that's no, I will not stand for this. If the fucking Xbox One X is a terrible name because someone had to know. There's no way that everybody in the world except for the people working at Microsoft were the only people who knew that Xbox One X was a terrible name for that console.
Who's the lead at Xbox right now? What's his name?
Phil Spencer.
Phil Spencer. This might be Phil Spencer's son because the way he said the name on stage, he did not sound particularly proud of it.
It's this is the Xbox One X. Yeah.
And the way he mumbled the price and things.
$499. Yeah,
and we know he's a passionate guy. So
Phil Spencer's cool. I have some faith in him, but So they had a whole kind of wet fart of press conference. The cool thing they did show is they showed because that Jurassic Park is big again, so they showed off a Jurassic World video game sort of debut trailer that looks like, I think it's supposed to basically be a Jurassic Park tycoon kind of game, which that's actually a really good idea. Such a good idea that it kind of amazes me that it hasn't happened before.
Such a good idea that I'd rather do that than see the movies.
Sure, exactly, because it's there have been so many Jurassic Park the movies at this point, but there's also been so many Jurassic Park video games, and almost all of them have been abjectly fucking awful. And this is the one video game idea that's that actually is a really good idea for a Jurassic Park video game.
And we should say it's not an exclusive or anything.
No, yeah, that's the sort of kicker is that it was just a nice stage to show off this new game at, which also is it's a licensed game, so it's not the biggest thing in the world, but yes, it is coming to PC, Xbox One, and PS4.
And I should say, I want reasons to root for Xbox.
No, absolutely. I want both Microsoft and Sony to be at the top of their game. So
I would like them to be more competitive because Sony, I think, has gotten a little lazy in some areas, not with the games, but with some of the hardware stuff. And I'd like to see, because competition breeds innovation.
Yeah.
And the Xbox has so many promising things about it that my hope has been, and again, I'm not buying one at launch, but if I hear really good things about the Xbox One X, I might upgrade at some point because the Xbox One is a platform with a lot of promise and a lot of flaws.
Yeah.
And I think if you could iron out some of those flaws and focus on things like the backwards compatibility, and that Games with Gold has been a really good service in this generation, much better than PS Plus the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And their online offerings are pretty good, and they've gotten the UI more under control. If they can get all that together, I'd like to support them more. I really would.
Yeah.
I like Xbox. But anyway,
one other thing at Gamescom that is one of the most annoying things, even though it doesn't really affect me, it just is really annoying, is there has been this whole second version of what happened with Rise of the Tomb Raider 2 to 3 years ago, where they showed they debuted Rise of the Tomb Raider on a Microsoft stage at E3 3 years ago, and that was when the messaging around that game was so messy. Nobody had any idea if it was a Microsoft exclusive, if it was going to be multi-platform at launch, if it was going to be multi-platform a year after launch. And it took a whole day or 2 days of different press people asking different people at Microsoft about Rise of the Tomb Raider to get any semblance of an idea of what the fuck they were talking about when they were saying exclusive with regards to Rise of the Tomb Raider. Then eventually, obviously, it was an Xbox launch exclusive that then came to Sony's console a year later. But now we have PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is the sort of... It's the huge multiplayer Steam darling in early access that has, like, I think 3 to 4 million players now on Steam. It's been a crazy success. And at E3 this year, Microsoft said, like, PUBG, which is what it's sort of like being colloquially called now, is going to be an Xbox One video game at some point, and that's going to try to like launch this fall or something.
Because PUBG is technically still in early access, and Xbox has the early access thing, whatever they call it.
Yeah, the game preview program.
Yeah, so it would be part of that by the end of the year.
Yeah, but there was a pretty good understanding at that point that while it was probably going to be Microsoft exclusive at first because it would be on the game preview program, that it was absolutely going to go multi-platform at some point. But then they had another trailer and talked about it more at this Gamescom press conference, and the like language about exclusivity and Microsoft is publishing the game on the Xbox and all this stuff came up to the point where if you like Google it now, it's still like most gaming press outlets have no idea what is going on with it. And I just want to read a Twitter conversation that was part of a whole NeoGAF thread about this topic. And I just found this Twitter conversation so infuriatingly just like talking around this subject. It's between Destin Leggery, who is a producer at IGN, and then responding to him was a Twitter person, the Sammy PUBG _Gamescom, that I assume is some social community manager or something like that. But anyways, Destin from IGN says, I was not clear on the PUBG announcement. They were always publishing it on Xbox. Did they confirm it's 100% exclusive? And then the community person responds, we have expanded the partnership and will be working more closely with the @Xbox team to launch on console faster and will get more support. Then Destin responds back, to clarify the phrasing, does that mean it'll be published exclusively on PC and Xbox but not any other consoles with Microsoft as the publisher? Then Sammy responds, yes, this partnership is about allowing our dev team to solely focus on Xbox and PC development and bring PUBG to Xbox players faster. Then someone else called Tall Dave chimes in and says, that still doesn't really answer the question though. And then Sammy responds, we have nothing further to announce at this time. We'll be working hard to bring PUBG to Xbox sooner. And it's like,
here's the thing. This would be the kicker for Xbox, right? Or
kicker, it would be a huge exclusive for them.
Yeah, because PUBG is huge. And Xbox has done so much cool stuff recently with like cross-platform between PC and Xbox that if this really was an exclusive, one, perfect for the Xbox brand.
Sure, yeah.
And their multiplayer and online stuff. Absolutely perfect. You have it as an actual exclusive. That is a game that will sell consoles. That is a game that will promote community. All of those things. And why that's all kind of weird and disheartening is that Microsoft knows that, and if they actually had the exclusive, they'd be like calling it from the rafters.
That is the number one sort of like context clue for. Of course, it's going to come to the PS4 because if it wasn't, then like I said, Microsoft would make it 100% extremely clear that PUBG is only coming to them. But it's something that's like just insane about the fact that I feel bad for all these like other like community people that have to respond to these questions because it feels like someone at Microsoft just has like a sniper trained on their head at all times. You cannot like, let alone mention the like PS4 or Sony. You can't even like say the word like other consoles. You can't say put those two words together in a sentence or they will fucking kill you. You have to just keep on reiterating this like, well, no, we're just working really hard to bring PUBG to the Xbox sooner and give the Xbox community the best PUBG experience possible. It's like, is it going to go anywhere else? We're really focusing on this Xbox, but if you're focusing, that means you're probably then at some point going to do, we're doing the Xbox version of the game. It's like, but are you doing, can you answer this question without saying the fucking word Xbox? Is this coming to any other platform than PC and Xbox? And it's just insane to have to watch this and see the games press like GameSpot and stuff have to like write these articles and amend an article 2 times, just like update it over and over to be like, well, now this statement I think makes it a bit more clear that it's probably going to come to other places. Oh, but then this person says something that makes that a little more suspect because, you know, they're a news outlet. They have to go by what people say. They can't just say, but of course it's absolutely obviously going to come to the PS4 because they can't quote anyone saying it.
Yeah, it's a bizarre set of circumstances.
It's really fucking annoying is what it is.
All right. Crackdown 3 was also delayed to 2018.
Yes, that was part of all this.
Wanted to note that because we were thinking either Crackdown 3 would be delayed by a long stretch. We talked about this at E3.
Yeah.
Or it would be another Mass Effect Andromeda of a game that clearly was like not finished until the day it came out, and then was still not finished.
Yeah.
And then never got finished, and won't get DLC. That's a bit of news from this week.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, so, hey, maybe that's a good thing for Crackdown 3. It is a weird thing in that was going to be the launch day release for the Xbox One X, and now the Xbox One X will not be launching with an exclusive, which is a weird strategy, but we'll see how it works out for them.
I mean, it definitely sort of confirms our suspicions from E3 that it's like, this game was not... Like, Microsoft was really pushing to try to show this game off at E3 because...
And, hey, kudos to them for delaying it.
Absolutely,
and doing what they needed to. And hopefully Forza will carry them through the year. But boy, this is a dry year for Xbox exclusives.
Yeah, which is really unfortunate for them because it's like the most potent year for Sony exclusives like since like the heyday of the PS3.
Yeah, absolutely. And Nintendo is tearing up the fucking charts. I mean, we're getting a new Zelda, a new Mario, all these other things. Yeah, so, Xbox, this is not the best year for them to be launching a console, methinks.
Yeah.
Because they don't really have the games. The only game I've bought on Xbox all year is Tacoma, which is a partial exclusive. And you know what? No, I have pre-ordered Destiny. Not an exclusive, but that's where I play Destiny. So, there you go.
There you go.
I got the $100 edition for $90 because Amazon had gift cards for 10% off.
Well, there you go.
It's smart shopping right there.
That hot pre-order exclusive limited. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I really just wanted to pre-order it so I didn't have to think about it anymore, and it would preload at some point because that's not a game I'm going to want to download on day one.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, I cannot wait to see how big Destiny 2 is.
Oh, yeah. Like, especially by the end of its lifetime, it'll be 200 gigabytes.
I know. We're not talking about this today because the game just came out and we haven't played it, but I got Uncharted: The Lost Legacy in the mail today. And I love looking at them like, oh, this is like it's a full game, but it's not like a giant Uncharted game. It's a $40 release. Look at the back of the box. How big is this game? 50 gigabytes. It's like, man, nothing is less than 50 gigabytes anymore. Yeah. I don't get it. Anyway, preview for next week. We'll talk about that game. One other thing from Gamescom. I don't know if this was at Gamescom, but around this time, the first trailer for Shenmue 3 came out.
Yes, this was part of Gamescom.
Okay, a game you would be forgiven for forgetting about because the Kickstarter was years ago at this point.
Yeah, it was like 2014 or 2015.
Yeah, it's been a while. It was one of the big surprises at an old Sony conference at this point when the PS4 was still young and blossoming.
That was when they announced like the Final Fantasy VII remake and everything.
Yeah, so we finally got some footage, about a 2-minute little teaser. I know nothing about Shenmue really. I thought it had some pretty music. Other than that, I have no way to judge this, but I was curious about your thoughts because you love Shenmue.
Yeah, Shenmue's fucking awesome. Shenmue's a great game. And it's something where like it's hard to sort of draw a lot of conclusions by the trailer because it definitely looked early. Because the game's not like sort of like theorized to come out, let's use that word, till like late 2018, and even then I imagine it's fairly likely that'll get pushed to 2019 because it's so like a lot of like the facial animation stuff is very stiff or non-existent on some of the characters. Like the main character has basically no facial animation at all, which if you know one thing about Shenmue, or should know one thing about Shenmue, is that Shenmue 1 back in like 1999 was a showcase for like super advanced facial animation at the time. So I don't expect that Yu Suzuki and his team are going to go with no facial animation as like the complete inverse of what Shenmue used to be. But yeah, like I'm really excited for Shenmue 3. I'm excited just to see what that game is going to be. Like I would not go in with super high expectations because it's been so long since Shenmue 2 and it is a Kickstarter game. It's having to go through all these weird channels to get made. But it is really sort of like gratifying to see that it is getting made because, Yu Suzuki is a great classic old, Japanese Sega game designer, and just, Shenmue was his like, that was his project, like that was his baby, and then having like him trying to work so hard to get that to come up, and then the Shenmue community is so passionate and has wanted the continuation of that story for so long. I'm just happy it's getting made because it's the kind of thing that never fucking happens. Like that never gets made. It's always a thing that's like, it would be like if in a slightly more reasonable time span that like Firefly had like come back in some way and those fans were like, it's fucking awesome. Like you're actually like, that's something that somehow actually worked. Or I mean, it's kind of like the Serenity movie was sort of like that.
Yeah.
And so it's just the kind of thing that's so rare to have, somewhat like a creative individual being able to sort of continue their dream project and having that like fan community be able to sort of get what they've been asking for. Even if again, I think it'd be a huge mistake to go into this expecting it to be like the greatest game ever made, but it's going to be, I think, a very fascinating game at the very least.
Any chance we'll get Shenmue 1 and 2 on modern consoles?
There have been persistent rumors of that for like 2 years. I think it has to happen at some point. Like Sega can put those games out. I think they would have to probably change some stuff because there was a lot of product placement. Like there's like Coca-Cola stuff in there. Although some of that product placement was already removed for the American release originally. So I think they can figure something out. I think they'll put out HD remakes of those games.
Those are pretty inaccessible at this point.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah, anyway.
Also, definitely, like, one of the big things is I think Shenmue 1 needs to be available in the Western market with, like, the Japanese voiceover, because the English dub for that game was very ambitious and, like, is remarkable for how ambitious it was at the time, but it is not very good.
And, kind of like Final Fantasy X or something?
Sure, something like that, but even worse than that. It's just something where, like, the story of that game is very different if you're getting the Japanese, like, language stuff part of it. So, yeah, I think they should make, like, definitive editions of Shenmue 1 and 2.
All right, one last state of announcements, which is Final Fantasy 15 has announced some new stuff. It is coming to PC, which is cool. I know my brother is super excited for that because he's got a big gaming PC. And when Final Fantasy 15 came out, he could only play it on Xbox One, where if you've only played it on PS4, you think Final Fantasy 15 is a beautiful game. And then you look at it on Xbox One and you're like, ooh, the Xbox One is not as powerful. And anyway, hopefully that gets an Xbox One X patch is all I'll say. Yeah. But he's very excited for that because it's going to be a full 4K release and all that. And that's good. Final Fantasy 15 is a beautiful game.
Yeah, that is definitely a game to show off a really expensive rig on.
Yes, so that's cool that they're doing that. I know Hajime Tabata really wanted to do that, so I'm glad he got to. Final Fantasy 15 is also getting a mobile edition.
Okay,
which is, have you seen this?
Yes, I have seen this.
It's very bizarre. It's going to come out later this year, and it's like Final Fantasy 15 with like chibi versions of the characters. It's a 10-chapter like episodic story, but they're putting it all out at once, and you can get like episode 1 for free. And it'll like retell. It's not like they've remade all of Final Fantasy 15 in chibi form.
No, that'd be absurd.
Yes, but they've done like a retelling of the story with the chibi stuff and some simplified touchscreen controls. I can't really get a sense on what this thing is yet. Mm-hmm. They also really heavily implied that it's going to come to Switch. And by it, I mean Final Fantasy 15. Whether that is the full game or the mobile version, we don't know. How the full Final Fantasy 15 would run on the Switch, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So it's probably the mobile version, but I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe there'll be like a special in-between of like it's kind of like the mobile version, but it has more of the actual game stuff in it.
Final Fantasy 15 at 10 frames per second on Nintendo Switch. No. The Switch can do many things. It probably cannot run Final Fantasy 15.
I would not think so.
Given that the Xbox One had pretty significant issues with it.
It would be pretty amazing to see the Switch try to do some of the summon animations in that game, though. Like that, I feel like your Switch would just melt.
Yes. That little fan would go into overdrive. So yeah, Final Fantasy 15... We haven't talked about it much, but that game is alive and kicking in the absolute weirdest ways, where it is a single-player linear experience that they are treating like an online multiplayer game. And I loved Final Fantasy 15 as much as anyone on the planet, and I really have not gone back to it because I played the game, and one day I might play it again and see all that stuff, but I really haven't gone back to it. So I don't know. They're clearly treating it as like an evolving thing, and I guess maybe this is their replacement for doing like 15.2 and things like that. But who knows? It's been a weird ride for that game, but I don't know. Nice to see it's coming to PC, and I don't know what that mobile version is, but we'll find out.
Yeah, I'm curious to see also like if it will get a sort of modding scene or anything on the PC, of how locked it down that stuff will be, because I think there would be a lot of interesting potential.
Well, and this will be the first Final Fantasy to come out to PC like within the relative lifetime of the game itself.
Not like the Final Fantasy 7 on PC, which was like 20 years later.
Right, or 10 finally came out a couple years ago. So that'll be interesting to see because this has not happened before. All right, so Sean, that's all the news, that's all the stuff. Now we can get into our spoiler reviews. We're going to talk Sonic Mania, then we're going to talk Twin Peaks. But let's start with Sonic Mania. We talked about it a little bit last week.
Yeah.
And we thought it was awesome. What do you think now, Sean? You finished the game. Well, tell us what you've played, I guess, also.
I mean, so I've finished the whole game. I haven't had enough time to like go back and do like a full Knuckles playthrough, and I haven't gotten all the Chaos Emeralds yet. I'm kind of like waiting to do that. But I am having fun just sort of playing it sort of like how I normally played Sonic games, because Sonic the Hedgehog 3... while it does have a save feature, I think my cart of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 on the Sega Genesis kind of had a slightly, maybe not great battery, so because that save would not always stick. And I just liked playing that game, and then like Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and stuff, when we had written that one, because we didn't own it. But I liked playing the first couple of levels and being like, that was fun, instead of like putting it down and doing something else, because that Sonic the Hedgehog was designed in that kind of era where even if it was a home console game, it had that kind of arcade sensibility underneath it. It's a side-scrolling platformer. It wasn't a huge RPG, so it had the live system. It had like these continues and like hard game overs, and you had to go back to the very beginning of the game and play it through. And so Sonic Mania retains so much of the core spirit and design ethos of classic Sonic the Hedgehog games that it is made like one of those games. So I have had fun going in and doing the sort of the no save mode, where if you do that, you can use some of the secrets you've unlocked in the game, like you can use the Insta Shield from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, which is my preferred way to play the game. I wish you could just use that on a normal save, because I think I have such a muscle memory around using the Insta Shield, which is sort of the move you have in Sonic 3, where if you jump and hit the jump button again, you get this like brief, has to be like 1 to 2 frames of like this flash around Sonic that slightly extends the amount of like the space around him to do damage, and also I think can kind of make him invincible towards projectiles if you time it like perfectly. And so I have a lot of muscle memory around using that, so I've had fun doing that. You can also unlock the super peel-out move that's from Sonic CD, where if you press up and jump, Sonic will run in place, and it's kind of like a faster version of the spin dash from standing still. And so I've just had fun kind of like going around and like playing the first couple levels as Knuckles, replaying the first couple of levels as like Sonic only with some of those other abilities, playing like the first couple of levels as Tails, and haven't like mounted a full like I'm going to go all the way through the game again playthrough yet.
So I'm kind of surprised. I've played more of this than you.
Okay,
because I beat the game as Sonic and Tails. I did a standard like default playthrough with Sonic and Tails, beat that, and then I have started playthroughs for both Knuckles and Tails. I've gotten about halfway through with Knuckles, and I'm almost done with my Tails playthrough. On my Sonic and Tails, like my original playthrough, I did go back in, because once you've cleared the game, you can go into any level and just play it as you want.
Yeah.
And that means you can actually farm Chaos Emeralds pretty quick. So I've gotten all 7 Chaos Emeralds, and I've seen the true ending.
Okay.
And I have also, through my Tails playthrough, I've gotten all 7 Chaos Emeralds. So I'm now on the final levels, and it's kind of cool to have Super Tails for the end of the game.
Does Super Tails still have like the 3 flickies around him from Sonic 3 and Knuckles?
He does not.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
I'm sorry. I was actually a little disappointed. Super Tails does not. He has like a glow, but it's not like Sonic where he becomes yellow.
Yeah, I mean that's basically the Super Tails. I guess it's like his Super Tails transformation was only Sonic 3 and Knuckles if you got all the Chaos Emeralds and then all the Super Emeralds in that game. And it's basically the same character model with a slightly different hue to his fur. But like the cool thing was he had these 3 super flickies, which are the birds that fly around him and do damage and attack things.
Yeah, so the only character I have not gotten all the Chaos Emeralds for is Knuckles, although I'm close. I've gotten like 5 of the Chaos Emeralds for him, because I'm pretty good at knowing where those are now. And I really like the Chaos Emerald minigame in this game.
Yeah, they're probably the best Chaos Emerald special stages that Sonic has had,
I would say by far, yes. So I've played it, I've basically played it once all the way through, start to finish. Tails, I'm almost done with an all the way through playthrough. I've dicked around in other modes. I even, last time I got into playing with the debug mode, which is a crazy, weird part of the game. Yeah. So yeah, I've played a lot of this game. Like I also got into trying to get some of the medals, which is how you unlock the extras, which is one of my more significant complaints with the game. I think it's a really messy system, and I don't particularly like how they use that minigame in this, but I have been diving into that a little more and trying to farm some of that. But I have been playing a lot of Sonic Mania, and some of it is that I have it on the Switch, and so I can take it with me really easily. I was also playing a little bit of it today while I was waiting for my dog at the groomer. It's a good game. I can. My dogs like to be more up in like the living room area, away from where my TV and like my game systems are, so I can bring my Switch up there with them, and because I'm in their presence, they will calm down a little bit, and then when they fall asleep, I can play Sonic Mania. So it's been good, but I love the fucking shit out of this game.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Really fucking good.
And when I said I love it, even when I hate it, what I mean is that I also find it a brutally difficult game at some points.
Sure.
In the way that some people might not agree with me on this. I've always found the Sonic Genesis games brutally difficult in a lot of ways. In ways I never think of, for instance, Mario in that way. Some Mario side-scrolling ones can be tough, but never to the degree that a Sonic 1, 2, or 3 are to me, where those games can be really challenging and confusing in some ways, but fun, a good challenge, and Sonic Mania definitely has some of that. And you've probably seen me on Twitter just sometimes be, and I don't know if the tone comes across, it's not anger at the game, it's sort of like, oh my god, how the fuck do I do this? But I'm having fun figuring out how to do it.
Sure, yeah.
So yeah, I found it really challenging, but my number one takeaway with Sonic Mania is this game is not just a celebration of the Sonic the Hedgehog franchise, and it's a great celebration of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
It's a celebration of the art of creativity itself. This is such a creative game This has so much love and passion poured into every frame. It is so bursting with surprises and fun things to discover that I've played a shit ton of this game, and I'm still going through levels and finding new paths and new ideas and new animations and things. I love it. I would go off what I said last week, where it does feel to many degrees like just pure from the tap Genesis era Sonic the Hedgehog, but it also feels like more than that. I might say this is my new favorite Sonic game. I think this
it's for me. Yeah,
I think
it feels a bit unfair just because the game can do so many things that old Sonic can't.
Yeah.
But if you're not taking cultural influence and stuff into account, is just as a game, how good is it? I think it's the best Sonic game because it builds.
I agree.
It is, the game is to me what the really ill-fated Sonic the Hedgehog 4 project that Sega had several years ago. This is what that should have been.
Yes.
It feels so much like a straight continuation of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. It takes all the ideas of Sonic 3 and Knuckles because Sonic 3 and Knuckles before this was my favorite one. And because I thought the Sonic franchise had this really good progression from Sonic 1 that is a solid game, but does not fully found itself in terms of its level design and stuff, to Sonic the Hedgehog 2 that really refined it and found this really strong core, and Sonic the Hedgehog 2 is this really solid game. And then Sonic 3 and Knuckles found all these interesting ways to complicate that by adding more playable characters and making the other playable characters like Tails differentiate themselves from Sonic in more ways. Because in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Tails can't fly if you're playing as him and stuff like that. And so in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, you have 3 playable characters, and they're all very different. You have all the different shield types that have different abilities. The levels are way more complicated. There are bosses at the end of Act 1, so there are mid-bosses now, and that was not a thing in Sonic 1 and Sonic 2. So Sonic 3 and Knuckles brought all those things to the forefront, added more little nuggets of story and context, transitioned between the different levels instead of you just ending a level and then starting at the next one. Instead, there's a little thing that shows how you go from Angel Island Zone to Hydro City Zone. And Sonic Mania takes all of those ideas and then pushes them one step further, even beyond it. It kind of feels from a design sense, the sort of the Sega Saturn Sonic game that Sega never actually made. That they should have made, the actual continuation that had more hardware behind it, that had that sort of step forward in the design philosophy of making the levels even more complicated and have even more roots and more intricate and stuff. But Sega canned that Sonic game and never really figured out what to do with it. And this feels like somehow you went back in time and plucked that out from 1996 or something and plopped it down here. And other than obvious things like the white screen and the degree to which the sprite animation is as stellar as it is, it feels like it could have been a game from that time.
Absolutely. And for 99% better, and for 1% in various areas worse, I might say. But overall, it is exactly that. But it does also feel because this is a game, one of the most remarkable things about it is Sega basically went out into the community to some degree.
Yeah.
These are professionals. They have done professional projects before. They didn't pluck someone off of a message board and have them make a Sonic game.
Right.
Christian Whitehead and Pagoda Games, they've worked with Sega on other things. But people who came out of the community and had a lifelong love of Sonic and had to make this game. And you can feel that. This feels like a game with 20, 30, not 30 at this point, Sonic isn't that old, but 20, 25 years of deep understanding of what makes Sonic good,
Yeah.
Kind of I would compare it a little bit to when Nintendo, and this is a little different because this was Nintendo didn't take someone outside Nintendo to make this, but when they made New Super Mario Bros. In 2005, and it just felt oh man, these people get it so much. And I think Sonic Mania is that to the nth degree.
Yeah.
And just, it is so daring and it is so exciting, and pretty much every level in the game is a hit. There's one act of one zone I don't love. Other than, that's a really high batting average still, because there are 12 full zones, so 24 levels.
There's only 2 bosses that I don't like in the game, and there are a lot of bosses in the game. Most
24
of them
bosses.
I think are amazing.
I agree, and there's, probably 2 or 3 bosses I don't like. And I think all of the 24 levels feel very differentiated. This is, Act 1 and Act 2 almost always feel like very different beasts. The animation and the graphics are absolutely astoundingly beautiful, and a statement that pixel art is just as valid a way of doing a game these days as hyper realistic 3D visuals, because this is one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen.
Yeah, for me it's it's just that sweet sprite animation, that stuff
so good.
It's so rare that because even indie games that have sort of sprite or pixel based graphics still don't have that level of fidelity and animation quality to them, and it feels if people have ever played the Metal Slug games, like those are games you go to just be like, these are the most amazing sprite animations just ever made. They're so smooth, they're so intricate. Just like type in like Metal Slug GIF into Google and you will spend an hour just looking at all these intricate, amazing animations. And Sonic Mania is like that. Like it's not just that it's like a retro style, it's a retro style done to a fidelity and with like a level of like craft and technical expertise that was not possible at the time. And it's such a good look. Like there's so many frames of animation of just every little thing. Like Sonic just looking up. I'll just do that every now and then and just be like, oh my god, there's like you can't even see that there are frames of animation, which is usually in sprite animation, it's very apparent that like, oh, there are 3 or 4 frames of Sonic looking up in Sonic 3. And this is like, it could be fucking 20. I have no idea.
It's super fluid. His look up animation I love, where he looks up and blinks and just has so much character. And I saw people talking about this when the opening movie for the game, which sadly you have to wait through the title screen to play. I wish it just played at the start. Sure. But anyway, the opening movie that is with this came out on YouTube, that it feels like this game understands that Sonic wasn't just like rebel attitude. He was also fun and childlike in a lot of ways, which got sanded off of him a lot in later era, where he's just like, I'm Sonic, yo, and stuff like
the extreme sports era Sonic.
Right, like... And it feels like they've brought so much of that back, and so much of where this game gets like Sonic as a character right to me is in the look up sprite animation. And he has just this look of like innocent wonder to him. And I love that. But you have not played Standalone with Tails yet?
I have a little bit.
Yeah. A little bit. Tails is the best animations to me. He is amazing. Like when he gets going, like the main fast animation, he has this look of like steely determination on his face, but like youthful, because Tails is a little kid.
Yeah.
And I love it. It just makes me think of like the Sonic cartoons when I was a kid, and like Tails going around with Sonic on a hunt for chili dogs or something.
Sure, yeah.
Or all of his animations when he's flying, or it's really great when he's underwater. You can't do the tail spin, but you can swim, and the way he like uses his arms and swims, it's great. Knuckles also has phenomenal animations. The enemies all do. Robotnik / Eggman, whatever you want to... He's Robotnik in this one. Yeah. He looks amazing.
I think he's still Eggman in this one, because like when you're in Studiopolis, you can see in the background
Egg,
TV and stuff.
Yeah. But in our hearts, he might be still Robotnik.
I mean, I think technically for the American versions of the games, he's supposed to be Ivo, quote, Eggman Robotnik.
Okay, then I'm good. Eggman / Robotnik. He has great animations. All the enemies. They do some crazy stuff with one of my favorite stages, the Mirage Saloon Zone, and some of the characters you meet there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah, no, visually this game is off the charts good. And you're right, a significant evolution, because we've had a lot of throwback sprite animation games in this era. Another one I would say is exemplary in this regard is Shovel Knight, but they limit themselves a little more sometimes.
Yeah, that's a bit more like 8-bit Mega Man aesthetic.
And although I will say Spectre of Torment, the one that came out this year, goes a little further with some of that. But yeah, no, Sonic is in the general aesthetic, but when it wants to go further, it doesn't limit itself. Yeah. And there is a technical acumen brought to this project that is super impressive.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the star of the fucking show is the music, right?
It's so good.
It's so good. I tweeted this. In a world where Persona 5 sadly doesn't exist, Sonic Mania is the best soundtrack of 2017.
Sure.
Hands down.
That's saying a lot, because this is also Nier Automata, and Gravity Rush 2 came out this year. So
I would say better than either of those. I think Sonic Mania has an off-the-charts fucking great soundtrack, and it has a head start because it's working with like a whole era of game music from the early Genesis.
I mean, it's got that Chemical Plant zone.
Oh, it's so good. But it takes those songs and makes them even better, and then the Act 2 versions of all of them is only kind of loosely based on it, but goes crazy with it. My brother, who's a composer, was kind of talking to me about this, that what it often does is it'll use like very faithful chiptune like instruments in the Act 1 stuff, and then in Act 2 they'll stop limiting themselves to that and use like some more modern synths and instruments and samples and whatnot. Yeah. And it's a really cool effect.
Yeah, the quality of the music tends to sound a bit more like Sonic CD's soundtrack did than like them trying to sort of like ape the Sega Genesis sound chip, which just isn't possible.
No, it's so good. Like we played at the top of the show the Studiopolis one, which is the one that sticks in my head the most, but there are so many good ones. Like the Mirage Saloon song in Act 1. That's like my only complaint with that level is it's too short, because I want to hear the music more. Because it's so good, and the way it like uses that little like, do in the middle of it. Yeah. Oh, it's all of it is fantastic.
The boss music is really good. Oh, Sonic the Hedgehog is a franchise that has some like classically amazing boss music.
Yeah. So all the little tunes, they kept the tune for like when he's drowning, but for invincibility and speed up and some of those, there's new ones and they sound great, getting a new life.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah. The sound design and the music is all phenomenal.
Yeah. So where else do you want to take this conversation? Because then we were talking about the general technical, like overall look at this game. I want to talk about another thing that this game surprised me with a little bit, which, I think, so we're both in agreement. We think this is maybe the best Sonic game ever made.
Yeah.
And that is not, to me, making a full dismissal of, like, everything that's happened since Sonic the Hedgehog 3 or something, because there's been some good ones.
Sure, yeah.
I love the Sonic adventure games, and I think I don't ever want to write off 3D Sonic entirely, because I think clearly it can work. It just often hasn't. I don't think that's an inherent thing.
Yeah.
But it is like, this gets to the core of Sonic, and I think it also goes back to something that in popular conversation about Sonic the Hedgehog, I think we've maybe forgotten, which is that Sonic was never just about speed. And when I hear people talk about that, like, oh, this game isn't, you don't get to go fast enough sometimes. I'm not saying anyone said that about Sonic Mania specifically, just I hear that sometimes. It's like, well, those are really cool parts, and Sonic Mania does them better than ever, because there are some go fast parts in this game that are mind-blowing. But it's also about that these are linear levels, sort of, but they have all these branching paths. And sometimes you're going left instead of right, and you'll go up and down, and there's all sorts of things going on. And there's little kind of, I don't know if the puzzles is the best word, but little things you have to figure out kind of in the environment to go through on. And they kind of tax your brain, and they also are very challenging at points. And sometimes you can get really frustrated with it, but in a way that I think maybe a lot of people today probably, if you started playing games in 2010, that kind of like frustration with trying something over and over again isn't something you're accustomed to, but it can be a fun part of Sonic Mania. And I think it gets that and actually takes it a step further, where the level design is just so smart and so creative and so innovative and is so varied, where you're never doing one thing for too long, and it's constantly adding new things into the mix. And yes, it is fast-paced, but it's not always run left to right as fast as you can, which is what Sonic boils down to way too much these days.
Yeah, I think it's just the game understands something about Sonic that, like, lots of people that have made Sonic games in the interim have, like, completely forgotten, is that Sonic is not about speed, Sonic is about momentum. And it's like, those two concepts are very closely related, but they are not the same thing. Like, one of the consequences of effective momentum management in a Sonic game is that you're going to go fast. And then there are, like, the, like, sort of roller coaster sections. There's sort of your rewards for, navigating more complicated platforming bits in Sonic the Hedgehog games, where you get to, like, go through this whole, like, ridiculous thing, like, go through 5 loop-de-loops and shoot through a cannon and go, and, like, fly and, like, run over the top of water and stuff. And, those are, like, the, like, go crazy fast and sort of, like, the spectacle moments. But by and large, Sonic distinguishes itself from something like Mario in that it is, instead of being set on a largely flat plane that is about, like, a series of jumping puzzles where you navigate enemies and different sort of, like, traps and pits and stuff like that, Sonic has some of the traps and pits and enemy stuff, but is way more about trying to figure out a way to sort of manage your momentum effectively and get your way through levels. And it's like, you need to get up enough speed to go up, like, a sheer surface or something like that. You need to, like, figure out how to manage that and how to, like, do these jumps with this, like, much heavier sense of momentum, where Mario, like, especially, like, over time, Mario got, like, better and better at just, like, stopping being able to turn on a dime. Whereas, like, Sonic has never been about that. Like, Sonic is about the sense of, like, you need to be very deliberate in how you are doing your jumps and where you're landing and when you're jumping again, because you can't just stop. You have that momentum bringing you forward. You need to take that into account in how you're playing the game. It's the kind of thing that 3D Sonic has, other than I think kind of more recently with, like, Sonic Generations, has some of that
6 years
stuff.
ago.
Yeah. That, like, the majority of even, like, the Sonic Adventure games, which I have a lot of fondness for, never really understood that side of Sonic. And that's, like, that is what the core of those games were in sort of the original Genesis days. And I think it's something that if you're trying to translate that into 3D and wanted to maintain that spirit of those original games, that's, like, the number one thing you have to understand, is it's not about running fast, it's about managing your momentum, and that's what the gameplay mechanic is.
And Sonic Mania is a masterclass in good platforming design.
Yeah.
And the specific kind of platforming Sonic does, because we talked about this last week and you were just addressing it here. Sonic is a weird outlier in the history of video
absolutely,
gaming.
Yeah.
The Genesis trilogy with Knuckles and Sonic CD, which we haven't talked about enough, but that's a huge influence on this game, obviously. Yeah. Those 4/5 games, depending on how you count 3 and Knuckles, there's no analog to them in the history of gaming. There's not a Sonic-esque genre. It's not like Metroid, which now you can say it's a Metroid-esque game,
yeah,
or something like that. It didn't become that. Even later Sonic games aren't quite that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Sonic Mania is a throwback to that. But what Sonic and Mario and all good platformers have in common to me is that they have a momentum that takes you from start to finish and feels like you have gone on a challenging, journey through this level, but also one that was curated and built to like pull you through in the best way possible. Because when a Mario or Sonic level is bad is when it gets boring, where it's like there's a challenge that is like too sharp or something, or the momentum breaks, or like there's...
Or you've just like gone through like a series of like platform, floating enemy platform, and you've done that like 4 times in a row. It's like, why do you keep on throwing this exact same challenge at me over and over again? That gets dull.
Yeah, when it gets kind of rote. And Sonic Mania to me is, like I said, an absolute masterclass in this, because 24 levels through pretty much every one of them, I felt that rush of being pulled through, even if I had to go back and replay parts and whatnot. Just the overall sweep of the level. It's something that's actually very hard to explain, because Sonic Mania is not a game you can talk about in terms of what does it do well narratively. It doesn't really... It has a little story, but, that's not the focus.
Right.
It really is about pure game design, and as pure game design, this is as good a game as has come out in 2017.
Sure, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so... I want to talk about some of the levels. Because there's only 12 zones, so I kind of want to just go through them and talk about them. Because they're so good, and it's an interesting balance where 8 of them are remixes of zones from classic Sonic games, and 4 of them are brand new. But you never... And I don't know all the Sonic Genesis games as well as like you do, because I did not own a Genesis as a kid.
Right.
But I still have fondness for those games, so I could recognize like which ones were remixes and which ones weren't. But it doesn't really matter. It all feels new and fresh and great. Although there is, as you talked about a little last week, that when you have a good remix going, there is a fun sense of like, I know this jump, but I don't know that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about some of these. We start with Green Hill Zone, because of course we do.
Yes.
We have to.
Well, technically we start with like a brief glimpse of Angel Island Zone before you get teleported back in time. And like, again, I said this last time, like as someone who Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was my Sonic game, there was something so amazing about seeing that opening with that music, and then also when you play as Knuckles, it's a like another version of what is basically Knuckles' opening from Sonic 3 and Knuckles if you do the combined version.
Yeah,
it's very good. It's very nostalgic. But then yes, hard-boiled heavies, I think is what I saw they're called on sonic.wikia.com.
That's what they're called.
They like uncover some sort of secret gem that transports you back in time, and you land up in Green Hill Zone.
And look, Green Hill Zone is in every fucking Sonic game, or some version of it.
Yeah.
It is to Sonic what Born to Run is to Bruce Springsteen.
Sure.
He's gonna play it every night, but the adventure is in how do they like modulate it.
Yeah, it's like the Warthog level in a Halo game. It's gotta be there.
It's gotta be there, and this is a good Green Hill Zone, because other than like 2 minutes of Act 1, it goes off and does its own goddamn thing pretty quickly. And I love that it starts you off with this sense of immense familiarity. Like, this is one of the most played levels in games of all time. It's like Mario 1-1. But then it starts, Act 1 is basically an amalgam of Acts 1, 2, and 3 of the original Green Hill Zone.
Yeah.
And then Act 2 is its own thing. And I love the little spin the composer, T. Lopes, puts on the music in Act 1 and then blows the doors off in Act 2. But Green Hill Zone is a blast.
Yes, and just finding, for me, it was that moment where you find a fire shield in Green Hill Zone Act 1, the fire shield from Sonic 3, and it's like, oh, fuck. Like because up to that point, it's a fairly, like, recognizable Green Hill Zone, and you get that, and you're like, this is okay. And then I think you could, like, burn the bridge or whatever if you have the fire shield on. It's like, what the fuck?
Yep, that's great. When I played through it as Knuckles and then as Tails, I found a whole not underwater, but like a water section of the level way below that you can go down and explore that was not there before. So it's very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Green Hill Zone, not a ton to say about it, but they're just warming up. Because then we jump into Chemical Plant Zone.
Yeah.
Always one of my favorites when they drop the needle on the Chemical Plant Zone theme, which is like the least... Which is like the least remixed of all of them because you don't need to do anything to it. It's Chemical Plant Zone. But I've always loved that level. And I think this is Act 1 is like a really good refinement of Chemical Plant Zone. Because that level is great in Sonic 2. It's also got some bullshit like crush deaths and things like that.
Yeah, the weird sort of like square platforms that like move around. You can very easily get
and it's too easy to drown. Like this Chemical Plant Zone is much better designed. And then you get Chemical Plant Zone Act 2. And that is probably, to me, the best level in the game, because what it does, that's where it really announced to me, like, this game is something special, is Act 2 has this whole thing where you can, like, get these syringes and put gel into the chemicals that lets you bounce different directions.
Yeah, it's like Portal 2 Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yes, it is. It's absolutely like that, because you're jumping on this gel and going all around in these incredible heights and speeds, and it is so fun. And then at the end of it,
yes,
you get the best boss fight in the game, right?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's an amazing, like, it's sort of a different conversation because it doesn't use the sort of main game mechanics, but as a surprise, it is the most amazing boss fight, maybe would be the better word for it.
Which is just you land in a game of Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
Yeah, so you just play a round of Puyo Puyo against
Dr. Robotnik.
And I do appreciate that it feels like they made it pretty easy to get through, because it's like, I'm okay at Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, but if I'm in the middle of a Sonic level and I get dropped into that, I'm not going to give my, A-game performance.
And having played a ton of Puyo Puyo this year and gotten pretty good at it in Puyo Puyo Tetris for the Switch, I was like, I'm ready! I've been preparing, and that was the easiest boss for me.
I was very proud I got a 3 combo, and I was like, man, having not played this game in 12 years maybe, I feel very good about that triple combo.
But what a creative little surprise they give you. I love that. All right, and then you get Studiopolis Zone.
Yes, which is the first fully original zone in the game.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, it's basically their take on the Casino Night sort of style zone that is, traditional to Sonic. And I do appreciate that they didn't just do a straight casino zone, because of all the remakes we need to see, we don't need one that's just a straight another one of those. I like that it has a lot of the same sort of bumper and flipper mechanics, but it has a very different setting and kind of feel to it.
Because in Act 2 is where it gets more of that, where and it's fun because there's a little jackpot game where there's lottery balls coming out, but there's also you go down these martini glasses and you get points. It's all very creative.
Yeah, you can get turned into a radio wave and shot to satellite dishes and stuff, which is pretty nuts.
Yeah, Studiopolis Zone is another one of my favorites in this game. It as an overall zone, that or probably the Mirage Saloon are my 2 favorites. But it's visually so much fun because all of these are great visually, and they've added to the original Genesis or Sega CD graphics. But when they're free to just do their own thing, some of the visual creativity on display is out of this world. Throughout the Studiopolis Zone, you have all the posters and all the Eggman movie propaganda.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite moments is when you get into this big glass structure. You're like, what the hell is this? And then it's a popcorn popper, and you pop up with popcorn and then get shot out. It's just... I had the biggest smile on my face, and I've played Studiopolis Zone several times. It is a joy.
Yeah, that's probably the one that has the best spectacle moments of just when shit is going utterly crazy, which is that is what those casino levels were about. Was just I have no idea what's going on. I've completely lost control of this game, but it is still so much fun.
Yeah, because this game also, in general, to me, knows when to really push the challenge and when to kind of take their foot off the gas a little bit on the challenge and let the spectacle take over. Because you can't really mix those two things too much or else it gets too confusing. But yeah, I love that one. Then we get, so after Studiopolis is Flying Battery Zone.
Yes, from I think Sonic 3 originally.
Yeah, this is my least favorite zone in the game. Particularly I think Act 2 is really problematic in that it's got this one area where it was until my 3rd playthrough of this that third playthrough of the game that I started to figure out what the hell is going on in this part of Act 2 where you're under the ship and it's just, it will fling you off very easily and there's these electrical things. Just the challenge ramps up really hard in that part.
I didn't have any problem with that section. I thought...
Okay, both me and my brother. My brother just as much as me, so I was not alone in this. I thought I was crazy and then he played it and...
Maybe you're both just crazy. Maybe it's a disease of the Lack family. You can't handle Flying Battery Zone.
I like the overall animation. I love Act 1. I love the music. It's good. And I actually really like both boss fights in this one. You have this garbage compactor one.
Yeah, that one's good.
And then you have the one where you have to get Spider Eggman over to the spikes.
Yeah.
I will say, as Knuckles, that fight is almost impossible.
Okay.
There's just something about you have to do it from jump. Not almost impossible. You get it figured out. But you cannot just jump up and hit him across. You have to do it from the pole and swing across. And he's a little, Knuckles is heavier and slower. So it's really hard at a certain point, and you have to try it over and over again. And that whole level, Knuckles does not feel like he works in that level all that well. But no, I like this. I still like this. This is my least favorite part of the game. I still had fun with it. And I've played Flying Battery Zone a lot because as Knuckles, it took me 10 tries.
Okay, yeah.
So
yeah, because for me, it's definitely not one of my favorite zones because I've never really liked the up in the air zones in Sonic that much. Yeah. I mostly had just flashbacks both in this level and then one of the later levels of playing through the games on the Xbox Live Arcade releases, where I tried to make sure I like played through all of them with Supersonic, and then it's like got to those levels. It's like, don't turn it to Supersonic on Flying Battery Zone or some of the other zones. It's just like, it's just not possible. You're going to die immediately because you go way too fast.
Yeah, so anyway, Flying Battery Zone, and then we get the next original one, which is Press Garden Zone.
Yes, yeah.
And Press Garden Zone is probably the least impressive of the originals, but I still really like it. I think it's got great music. It's an interesting amalgam of different like visual influences.
And like it feels like it's a bunch of different sort of versions of other Sonic levels like stuck together, but is not necessarily a straight riff on one.
It feels like kind of a visual riff on like Sonic 1, but like done with better technology or something.
I mean, I always get the two, because there's the second level from Sonic 1. Marble Zone, and then I think it's Marble Garden Zone in Sonic 3, which is the third level of Sonic 3. Yeah. And this feels like it's a mix of those two, because you have kind of like the falling chandeliers and stuff. You have some of the mechanics from Marble Garden Zone from Sonic 3 in Press Garden.
But this one kind of snuck up on me, because my first playthrough, this one's kind of on the easier side, and I kind of breezed through it it's sandwiched between two harder zones, so I didn't think much of it. And then when I've played it again, it really started to grow on me, particularly the second act, where you've got all these like cherry blossom trees in the back, and they're falling. It's really beautiful, and I think there's some really clever level design and some great music. Like this one is, like I said, there's 4 completely original zones. I love all of them. I think they're great. This one is probably the least notable in that it does the fewest like new big things. Yeah. But I really like it, and we'll talk about this later. Like, what would we want out of a sequel? More of this kind of stuff, just like this sense of invention, which I love. So Press Garden Zone. I don't really remember either of the bosses from this one. They're good.
I can't. I think one of them is a riff on, although maybe that one was from Lava Reef. Like some of them kind of run together.
Yeah.
Anyways,
a lot of bosses. Then you get your first Sonic CD level, which is Stardust Speedway Zone.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's interesting just because the game is pulling more in terms of level design from the Sonic 1, 2, 3 tradition, because Sonic CD is a kind of a different kind of game. So it is interesting seeing them like kind of take some of the ideas from Sonic CD, which they do in some later levels as well, and try to like fit that in the more straightforward, like more traditional Sonic style. Because Sonic the CD is like kind of a game about backtracking, because you travel like backwards and forwards in time to destroy these different things, objects in the level. So it almost feels more like a Mario game in that way.
Yeah, I'll admit, Sonic CD is the one I've played the least of all the original Sonics, because I can never figure it out.
It is confusing because it is not like it. So you have to kind of change the way you think about Sonic to play Sonic CD.
But it fits here really well. Like, it feels like a good change of pace. It's visually very different. It's that very kind of metallic, grungy kind of Sonic CD thing. But no, I love it. And the big boss at the end of this one is Metal Sonic.
Yes, after you go to Act 2, where you go to the full, like, you do the Sonic CD thing of running through a sign and goes, future. And then you go into the future and you end up, I guess it technically would have been present day Stardust Speedway Zone, because you were in the past. Yeah. And and then you fight Metal Sonic, which this is the best Metal Sonic fight. It's so fucking good.
It's so fun. It's got such cool visuals. Like, Metal Sonic himself has so much tude. Yeah. Just wagging that finger. This was a challenging one for me. There's the part where you have to, because it's a multi-tiered boss fight, which there's not a ton of in this game, but this one is a big, like, 3-tiered one. And the middle tier, which is where you're in the room with Metal Sonic, and he's in a big machine, and there's this little guy that comes out, and you have to let him turn into a ball and then try to pinball
when you're
him
fighting Silver Sonic.
Yeah. For whatever reason, it took me a couple of runs through Stardust Speedway Zone to get good at that, and then when I played it through as Tails again, I knew what I was doing, and it was better. Or I was better at it, but I still liked it all the way through. And then the third phase, where you're just kind of chasing him around, and there's the wall of spikes coming at you, and there's the big Robotnik statue in the middle that's turning. Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, because I love those ones, like, because the first part of the fight where it's like more of that kind of race thing, and then the last part of the fight is pulling from the fight with him from Sonic CD. But I really like that middle part where it's kind of referencing a little bit. I think it's one of the Game Gear games, and then also the last level of Sonic the Hedgehog 2, where you fight, I forget what the fan name is for him, but like the sort of pre-Metal Sonic, and I like those fights against. I like in any video game. I like when the boss fight is against another enemy that is like your character, and it's like similarly proportioned and has kind of similar moves, and it's not just you fighting a giant like monstrosity or a giant robot. And there's something in Sonic games, it's very rare that you have that kind of boss fight, and there's something fun about like having to square off against a more evenly sort of like faced opponent.
Yeah, but it's cool, and this whole zone is great. Like Thomas, my brother, has been playing this, and he loves Sonic games, but more like the Dreamcast, GameCube era games, because that's what he was playing as a kid. And I don't think he loves the 2D games as much, but I remember when he was playing through... So he wasn't as excited for Sonic Mania. And, I get it. These aren't for everyone. But, like, when he got to start a Speedway Zone, I remember him coming and saying to me, like, holy crap, that was amazing.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a really good, like, point for, like, the kind of, like, the middle section of the game. It feels like this nice little, like, crescendo as it moves to different stuff.
Because that's the exact halfway point. That's Zone 6. Zone 7 is Hydra City Zone.
Yes.
Which I got completely mixed up, and I thought this was a remake of what's called
Labyrinth Zone,
from Sonic 1, which is...
very different. I mean, they're both water zones, but they're very different zones.
Well, and it was just because of the bubbles and, like, the things where you spin around and you have to jump, and some of the platforming mechanics in the water. But I have not played the old ones in a while, so I was just thinking of that. But no, Hydra City Zone is from Sonic 3, and I don't remember it as well.
So good. It has the best fucking music, and the remix of the music is really good in Sonic Mania.
But anyway, my point was I kind of looked at that, and because I remembered Labyrinth Zone more, I was like, oh, fuck, a water zone. And by the end, I was like, that was a hell of a water zone.
Labyrinth Zone is the one that has one of the weirdest openings where Sonic is, like, in this, like, water slide chute thing that, like, just goes on infinitely and repeats and repeats and repeats until you jump out of it. It's just like, what the fuck is how did this make he's caught in this Mobius loop or something? What is going on?
Labyrinth Zone also has its Act 3 boss is one of the hardest things you will ever do in a video game.
Oh yeah, where you have to run up and like try to catch up to him. Yeah,
and it kind of feels like the end of this one, Hydra City Zone Act 1 here is like you're getting revenge on Eggman for because you do a brief version of it. And then you're in his, like, pod, and you just suck him up.
I mean, it's amazing because you're controlling his machine from the Act 2 boss fight from Sonic 3. From the original Hydra City Zone. Yeah. It drops the mines, and then it has the propeller that pulls him up, and he's, like, in the water with scuba gear. It's really... It's one of the more creative ideas of, like, it's just an inverse version of a boss fight from Sonic 3, which is one of my favorite boss fights from Sonic 3, because it's a very interesting one.
Yeah, no, but both acts of Hydra City Zone, they're pretty unique. They don't leave you in the water too long, which is something the worst water levels in Sonic do.
Yeah.
They feel very varied. There's a lot of cool little puzzle mechanics. I really like this one.
Yeah, and it just riffs on, because Hydra City Zone is one of my favorite zones. I think it's by far the best water zone from the original Sonic games. And it's because it's level 2 from Sonic 3, so I played it a lot. And I really love the way they complicate some of the design elements, like the spinning, like you getting just shot through the water and having to grab the poles and slide up and down, and like the wall that comes for you and stuff. They remix a lot of the design elements of Hydra City Zone in really cool ways.
Yeah, nice. And then the second boss is the one where Eggman is chasing you, and you're basically being run through one of those just like funnels of water.
Yeah.
And you have to touch these bombs, and then they'll go to him, and when they blow up, he'll shoot a bubble out, and that's how you get an air bubble. Some of that I wish it was communicated slightly better through the gameplay, because I found it a little confusing, but it's still a really cool boss fight.
It's one of those where like the mechanics of the boss fight are so creative that you do have to like die once or twice to be able to get your head around like, okay, this is what's happening.
Yeah, so... but it's a cool one. And then after Hydra City Zone, you get my fucking zone, Mirage Saloon Zone.
Very
the
good.
Third original. Oh, it's so great. Act 1, you're on, like, Tails' plane.
Yeah, it's basically like Sky Chase Zone from Sonic the Hedgehog 2, where you're standing on the plane and have to fight I think it even has, like, the turtle guys that are in from that level.
I love that. It even reminded me in Super Mario Land, there's a couple levels where people forget this about Super Mario Land, where you like become a plane and you do this like shooting stuff.
Oh,
it's a really interesting thing.
Yeah.
But it kind of reminded me of that, of like a platformer that just suddenly changes itself and is very different and like mobile in a totally different kind of verticality way. But I love it. And just the visuals here with all the Western themes and the backdrop, like for lack of a better term, skybox in this zone is so cool.
I mean, that moment in Act 1 where like after you're like on the plane and then you catch up to the train, and it almost is like the opening scene from Indiana Jones The Last Crusade is what it made me think of. Like you have to get on this train and they're fighting guys.
Because it shows you the whole train before, and then you get on the back and you run through it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's great. And then the boss there at the end of Act 1 is where you're on the plane, and there's this like big snake thing coming up out of the desert. And that's one of those bosses where you're like, they could never have done this on Genesis.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It looks like a boss from like Space Harrier or something, the way it like jumps out at you. Like it looks like a boss that they should have, like, if you had a 3D TV set still, you should be able to put on 3D glasses and see the weird dragon thing jump out at you.
I love it. And then Mirage Zone Act 2 just gets weird, but in the best ways, where you have one of Eggman's like underlings is like has all this Mirage stuff where he's creating like different characters, and you're going through the level and doing that. And then the boss is he keeps turning into like other figures who look like they're from a Lost Knuckles spin-off game.
They're characters from, and this is one of my favorite things about the fucking game, is that there's all kinds of because we've obviously been mentioning it. There are tons and tons and tons of like really specific, really intricate bits of fan service all over the place in the game. And one of the things I love about the game is that you have this very large cast of like beloved other Sonic characters, like Amy Rose, which is referenced in the later boss fight. You have like Big the Cat, you have Gamma, like you have Cream the Rabbit, and all like these characters. You have the characters like Princess Sally from the comic books and stuff. And the characters they chose to feature, at first I thought it was just going to be a background thing because you see them on wanted posters all throughout Act 2 of Mirage Saloon Zone. But then in the last boss fight, like you're saying, the hard-boiled heavy sort of like turns into and summons these different actual characters that you fight. They are characters. They are the 3 original characters from the oft-forgotten mid-90s 2D, or not 2D, I'm sorry, 3D fighting game, Sonic Fighters.
I didn't know that.
That's like a kind of almost like Virtua Fighters-like kind of fighting game, and it is Bean the Dynamite, who is a duck. It is Bark the polar bear, who's the big polar bear, and it is my favorite, Fang the Sniper, who I think he's like a fox, but he's the guy with like the hat and the gloves and the brown boots.
See, I had looked up at first to see, are those the people from Knuckles Echidna or Knuckles Chaotix?
No, that's Espio. That's Espio the Chameleon, Vector the Crocodile, and Charmy the Bee. How could you ever get them mixed up?
I'm sorry, I forgot my Sonic Heroes training.
Yeah, they look nothing like, Bark the Polar Bear.
But that's a great reference.
I mean, they're like some of the most obscure Sonic characters that have ever been in video games, and I just love that they decided that those would because it would make way more sense to pull in the Knuckles Chaotix games or the Knuckles Chaotix characters because not many people played Knuckles Chaotix because it was a 32X game, but at least they were in Sonic Heroes. Like, they've been referenced more heavily. Like, the Sonic Fighters games are one of the characters are ones that even I can't name off the top of my head. I have to fucking look them up. And that means they have got to be obscure.
Yes, yeah. It's so great, though. And I guarantee you the Mirage Saloon Zone music will be a theme song on this podcast sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
Then we get the Oil Ocean Zone.
Yes, from Sonic 2.
And I love this one, but I think the Act 2 boss is terrible.
Yes, that is probably my least favorite boss in the game.
Because
1 or 2 I don't like.
It's a really sharp difficulty spike that's mostly based on, I think, poor game design, where, like, in the Act 2 boss, you get hit once, you're never going to recover those rings, and that's it. And then it's just, there's a lot of moving pieces you can drown, you have to get up on these platforms, it's really hard. I finally beat it on my playthrough as Tails. I just decided to get all the Chaos Emeralds early and turn into Super Tails, and that was the easiest way, because I could not get through it, and so you wind up playing Oil Ocean Zone, for me at least, over and over and over again, because if you die, you go back to the very beginning of the zone. But, up to that point, I love this Oil Ocean Zone.
Yeah, because Oil Ocean Zone is one of my least favorite Sonic stages from Sonic 2. That is the other one that, if you're playing through Sonic the Hedgehog 2, if you're going back and I should play all these old games, and you're playing a Super Sonic, don't fucking turn into Super Sonic on Oil Ocean Zone. It's a bad idea. You're just gonna fucking drown in oil. It's unplayable. But yeah, in this one, I think Act 1 in Sonic Mania is one of my least favorite stages because it feels maybe a bit too much like actual old Oil Ocean Zone. But Act 2, where they add in the submarines and all that crazy stuff, I think Act 2 is really good.
Well, and where they give you the fire shield that just lights all the oil on fire.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah, or I love that you have the one enemies that have the 2 fireballs surrounding them. If you blow them up, then the fire will drop and light the oil on fire. It's just a really cool, interesting, really it just feels like Oil Ocean Zone done right, which is something I never thought I would ever want in my life. But it's this is a really good version. I even think normally a game mechanic I wouldn't be that into, but I actually really like the way the fog comes up and you have to go reset it every now and then, and
I do too.
It gives you this way to sort of compartmentalize the level because it's kind of complicated in sections. But it is, I think, that last boss fight, I don't think I probably didn't have quite as much trouble with you because I want to say I only had to play through Oil Ocean Zone twice. And one time was, like, the first time was utter bullshit. The second time I lost to the boss, I probably should have done better. But there is, like, one thing that I think is, like, pretty inexcusable about the boss design is that if you jump up and, like, hit the one of, like, the tentacles or whatever, and then fall down on the platform right when it is sinking into the oil, you will die immediately. You will fall right through the oil instead of being caught by it. And I died from that, like, 3 times, and that's one of the main... That is the reason I lost the first time and had to go all the way back without having, like, understood anything about the boss mechanic, because I just died immediately. It's like, okay, that's not... Like, and it just feels like something that it was not supposed to happen. But it's just like kind of a finicky mechanic in the oil, and basing the entire boss fight around that feels like a kind of like an ill-considered decision.
I like the Act 1 boss fight. It's a little boss fight. It's very easy, but it's a fun little one.
Which one is that one again?
That's the one where he has all the like those green like pipes that will explode up.
Yes, yeah.
And they'll shoot you into the spikes, and you kind of have to die once to realize that. But other than that, you just have to run around and like dodge him a little bit and fight him. It's very easy, but it's a nice little fight.
Yeah, it kind of felt like a boss from Sonic and Knuckles. Yeah, that's a good one.
But anyway, that's Oil Ocean Zone. Then you get Lava Reef Zone.
Yes, that's from Sonic and Knuckles, I think.
Yeah.
Or maybe Sonic 3. I looked it up. It's hard to distinguish those two.
It's okay. I looked it up at Sonic and Knuckles because that's the game I'm like least familiar with.
Yeah.
I've played Sonic 3. I don't know if I've ever gotten to the end of all of it.
Yeah,
but like
you go to the Hidden Palace in Act 2 of the Sonic Mania one, which is from Sonic Knuckles.
Oh, nice. But yeah, Lava Reef Zone. I love the music in this one.
Yes, like the Lava Reef Zone Act 1 music from Sonic and Knuckles is one of my favorite Sonic songs, and their version of it is very good.
Yeah, but this one I don't know if I even have a lot to say about it. It's just very good, and it just feels like a super solid Sonic level, and I enjoyed it all the way through.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's a really good update of that old one. It's one where they're just like complicating some of the concepts and gameplay mechanics from the original in Sonic Mania. It's just really cool. And the last two, the first one, Metallic Madness Zone, is another Sonic CD one. And this one's a challenge, but a good, like, hearty challenge, I felt. And very cool. This is the one where you shrink down, right, from Sonic.
Yes, got it. Because I'm about to get there again with Tails, and it's all nuts, but I love it. It's very silly, but it's very fun. Yeah, and then you have a boss fight as Little Sonic, Chibi Sonic. This is another one that probably took me a couple of tries, but not in the sense of, like, I hate this game now. More like, I'm having a lot of fun with. Yeah. Because even if I have to play through this again, Metallic Madness Zone, like the other Sonic CD one, there are so many paths through it that if you get sent back to the beginning, you're like, well, I'll just basically make this a different level for myself. Yeah. So. And then is this the one where the Act 2 boss is the one that's on, like, the roller coaster? Like, the guy who's on the thing that goes on the roller coaster and, like, with the fire that shoots up? I think so, yes. Because that's my other boss that I didn't like too much. Just because, like, not because it felt hard, but more because it just felt like kind of, like, a bit messy. Like, I just felt like the window to hit the boss did not feel clear and precise enough to me. And just kind of the boss fight felt like a chore. And then we get the Titanic Monarch Zone, the end of the game and the last original stage of the 4. And I found it really hard until I started to figure out the mechanics around it. Okay. Because Act 2 is interesting in that you have to go to 4 separate zones, complete them, and then go fight the boss. Right. And the biggest challenge in all of that is if you're not sure how it's all going. I mean, there's some hard stuff in there, but also you can actually hit the time limit on this one pretty easily, and that killed me a couple of times. It's also like, I think Titanic Monarch Zone in a couple areas is also a little too visually confusing for its own good. Like, I wish the 4 zones in Act 2 were a little better distinguished visually. But once I got into the challenge of it and like the flow of it and figured out the mechanics, I enjoyed this one a lot. It is a challenge, and this is one point in the game where I was, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, I wish there was some option for like more lives or something, just so that every time you lost to the boss, it wasn't go all the way back, or like lost 3 lives to the boss, it wasn't do everything again, because it can be hard to get into a flow with that. But, I mean, it's true to the Genesis thing, and overall I think this is a good conclusion to the game. Yeah, it's one of, I think, the better, because I think, like, generally Sonic the Hedgehog games do not have very good last stages, because at a certain point when Sonic gets too hard, it's not that much fun. And honestly, I think it's one of the easier last stages in a Sonic game, because I didn't die on this. Well, I died, but I didn't have to, like, go back to the beginning of the stage. So, yeah, like, it took me like 2 hours.
Yeah, for me, it was like, have you like played the other ones to completion, the old Sonic games? Because some of the last stages of Sonic Hedgehog games are fucking brutally difficult. It's been forever. I've definitely done it with Sonic 1. I've done it with Sonic 1 like twice. I've done it with Sonic 2. I don't think I've ever gotten to the end of 3 in Knuckles. Yeah, because it just like this one felt like it is a long stage, particularly Act 2, but it feels less like bullshit to me than most last Sonic stages that are just like, God, there's way too much. There's too many enemies. There's too many spikes. There's too many like insta-death traps, like all packed together. This felt like a more fair sort of like escalation of the kinds of like mechanics and lessons you've learned through the game.
Overall, I would agree. It is, I think there's a certain gauntlet aspect to it where, you know, you've played a lot of Sonic and you know it better than I do. I think the average gamer might have more trouble with this area too, but it's still good. It is, you know, for better and for worse, as I said before, this game is very true to some of its origins, and that means that there is going to be a difficulty spike near the end, and this one I found fairly brutal, and again, because the saving system is not forgiving at all in that way, it does save, but
it is way more forgiving than like Sonic 1. Come on, man. Sure, you don't have to play the whole game through. Like, let's not be crazy.
But no one's going to release a game like that anymore, so, yeah. I mean, they give it to you as an option. Like, you know, one of the thoughts I had was, I don't need a version of this game that, like, changes the level design or anything, but you've got a no save option, and then you've got the main like 3 lives thing. Right. I wouldn't have minded for my first playthrough, and I'm pretty okay with it now, if there was like start with 6 lives option, just like an easy mode or something, just because I think, and I'm surely not the only person who thought this, that there is something pretty unforgiving about sometimes getting sent back and having to do things over and over again.
Sure.
Especially because 3 lives is pretty small, and even like a lot of throwbacks these days don't go quite to that low a level of lives.
Yeah, like I think there would be no harm in, because I mean, like plenty of games from that era, like Sonic the Hedgehog didn't, but lots of games had like, you know, put in a cheat or just go into the options menu and say like 3 lives, like let's make it 9 lives or whatever. I think it would have been fine to have an option, but I do think it is a really valuable part of those games that, like, because part of the design philosophy of Sonic the Hedgehog is that there are so many ways to play through a level. I think it is like a legitimate part of the game design that you are kind of meant to play through the levels over and over and over again.
Sure, and that's why
getting sent back to the beginning means you have to like reapproach the level and like use the knowledge you had the first time through to either like refine your first run through or explore the other paths that are available to find one that maybe is easier for you.
And I agree completely, and that's why it frustrated me a little, but it's not a game killer for me at all, and why my suggestion was, you know, maybe more lives, I wouldn't change anything about the level design or have it checkpoint you at the boss, which you know, I don't think it needs to do or something like that. But no, I think it,
Yeah, because there's something kind of refreshing about playing Sonic Mania and reminding me, like, right, the life mechanic in video games, like, used to actually have a, like, legitimate, like, mechanical purpose in a way that, like, you know, most modern video games have no need for it. So, like, when you have, like, you know, New Super Mario Brothers or something where they still have lives in it, you're like, what the fuck are these even doing? It like, there's no reason, or like Super Mario 64.
Those ones actually...
What do these serve?
Yeah, the new Super Mario Bros. Games actually do. They'll send you, there are save points, and they'll send you back multiple levels. It's basically the Mario World save system. The thing is, in New Super Mario Bros., it's just very easy to get 1-ups.
Right.
So yeah. And it is the thing that it's actually, it can be kind of challenging to get 1-ups in Sonic, because you can find them, or you can get 100 rings, but of course, it can be pretty tough to hold on to your rings, especially on a first run through of these levels. But that's why you refine it, and you get going with it.
And if you play the level through once or twice, you can find, like, you know, because I think on Oil Ocean Zone, because I had to play that one through all the way through, I guess 3 times, like I had found by my 3rd time through like 2 to 3 different life boxes, that extra life boxes that I knew where they were and could go to in each playthrough, and then like, and also how to like, okay, now I know how to like, I can get 100 rings in Act 1 and 100 rings in Act 2 without too much difficulty.
Yeah, and that's where
you can bolster your lives.
Yep, and that's where I would also get like the Chaos Emerald rings and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, it's neat. So yeah, that's Sonic Mania. You haven't seen the true ending, so I won't spoil it. I'll just say
I can imagine probably what it is.
Yeah, but I did enjoy playing as Super Sonic. It feels a little less finicky than it did in the Genesis games.
I assume it works basically the same way, where if you get 50 rings and you jump, it turns you into Super Sonic. That's
good. So it's a little finicky, but it's still cool. It's a nice mechanic. The way they let you kind of farm it at the end is great, and I love the chase the UFO thing is a great challenge. And I wish there was like, once you beat them all, there was an extras menu where you could just like play those again.
Yeah, you can put in a code that gets you a stage select menu if you want to look that up.
Oh, right, they are in the stage, because I've looked at that code. I forgot they were in the stage select menu. Never mind, you do have that. So yeah, no, they're really fun and creative, and I think a big improvement on the other Chaos Emerald stages. Yeah. Because the Chaos Emerald stage from Sonic 3 is in this one.
Yes, the blue spheres.
And I am banging my fucking... I'm banging my fucking head against the wall with these stages, because I don't... I'll say this. I love this game, and this is not even talking about the main game, so it's not a huge complaint for me. But I think those stages work a lot better to get 7 discrete Chaos Emeralds
Yeah.
than 40 challenge medals, which means that there are way more variations of them here. They feel randomly generated at some points.
They're definitely not.
They're not?
Yeah,
Okay.
because I've done enough of them that I've seen ones come around again that are definitely the exact same ones.
Okay, I feel like I haven't yet, and I did a lot of them last night, but maybe I'm just uniquely bad at these, but they are so hard and so unforgiving sometimes. I played for an hour last night and didn't get a single fucking medal. And I was just farming them on Green Hill Zone and trying to get them. And I don't know, there's just, because you hit one red thing and you're done.
Yeah.
And I don't know, because you have to get a lot more of them here than you would have in Sonic 3, right?
No, because they have, I think, almost all of like straight remakes of the levels from Sonic 3 and Knuckles.
No, but you have to beat these a lot more times, is what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, you have to do more of them. Yeah, there's more of them. I thought you meant they are longer than they were originally.
No.
Okay.
Because, I don't know, the challenge of them feels like in Sonic 3, because I was replaying the first couple levels of Sonic 3 a couple months ago, and I liked it there because it felt like a significant challenge, because what you get is 1 of 7 Chaos Emeralds.
Yeah.
Here you get 1 medal, I don't think I got a medal successfully at all through my first playthrough.
Oh, really?
No,
I think I got 30.
Really?
I mean, I've played so much Sonic 3 and Knuckles that I can go through the easier ones. I mean, but there are some of them that are fucking incredibly hard.
Yeah, there's some
of them require so much speed.
Why I said some felt randomly generated to me was I looked at some of them and I was like, I don't know how, I would just start surrounded by all red and I'm like, is this impossible? I just assumed it was impossible. There's something wrong with it.
No, yeah, I mean, because those stages get pretty complicated in Sonic and Knuckles, and then they keep on going from that. I will say, there's definitely too much of them. I'm fine with it. I think if you're going to pull any of the special stages from the original 3 Sonic games, the Sonic 3 one is the one you pull, because the Sonic 2 one is bullshit, and the Sonic 1 one is incredibly tedious. I like the Blue Sphere stages fine, but it's just I think they could have gone with having 20 instead of 40.
Because it's just that's how you unlock this whole extras menu that's right there on the main screen. And I don't know, I didn't even understand the mechanic by how you find those until I looked it up.
Oh, okay.
That you have to have 25 rings and hit a gate. That I did not understand that.
Well, I mean, you just have to, because there's 2 clear conditions. It's either you have to get all the blue spheres, and that's just you get a...
No, I'm saying to find the stages.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's a classic Sonic mechanic of you have to have a certain number of rings, and then if you get through a checkpoint, it has the spinning stars, and then you jump through them. In Sonic 3, those stages would have been in the giant rings, but in Sonic 2, that's how you would have done it.
Anyway, yeah, so
in Sonic 3, that's how you got the weird jump up and hit the gumball machine stages.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm ever going to unlock any of the extras. I've gotten 7 medals, so I have the extra moves for the no save mode, which you explained earlier. I did not know that was only for no save mode.
It's kind of hard to find. You have to go onto no save mode and then press triangle, and that will bring you into a menu where you can pick some of that stuff, because there's a couple of other ones you unlock.
Okay. But yeah, I haven't unlocked anything in the extras menu itself, and I'd like to see some of those, but
I know what... I think there's one, because I think one of them you have to get all 40, and that's the one I have not gotten yet. Yeah. I have everything else.
Boy, I've had a lot of trouble with them, because I feel like I keep getting ridiculously hard ones too when I get them, where you'll start and again not see any blue ones, and it's try to figure out how to jump over the things and then into the thing. I don't know, because I do not have a lot of experience with them from my childhood, so yeah. Anyway,
I think my main issue with them is just because especially it was my first playthrough. At some point, I was I'm just not going to go to the stages anymore, because there's so many checkpoints in this game relative to old Sonic games. That if you and it used to be there would be 50 rings and you go through a checkpoint, and that's how you get to a bonus stage, and this is 25, and so that's if you have rings on you a lot, you are running into these stages. You can get 7 in one stage if you have rings on you the whole time, and that's I'm not going to jump. I'm not going to play this stage. So, that's 3 times as much time spent in that mini game than there is just playing through this fucking act of this level. And so eventually I had to stop going to them, there's just too many.
But the main game itself is awesome.
And those mini games on their own are fine. It's just I think the implementation is not great.
And in talking about now, because there's so many, I wish they had other things, maybe the blue spheres thing, and then invent another couple of little things to have in there, so you get medals in multiple ways, not the same thing every time.
I'll just say I very much appreciate that they did not put the Sonic the Hedgehog 2 special stages in
They're not saying they had to use that,
because I have legitimate nightmares about running through those fucking tunnels trying to pick up rings. It's the most stressful thing, because at least with the blue sphere ones, like, you know, if you take too long, you'll speed up, but you can, like, turn and you can reconsider what you're doing. You're not just on the fucking, like, railroad track you are in Sonic 2.
No. I'm not saying
so many hours of my life spent in those fucking stages.
I'm not saying they should have used Sonic 2. Frankly, I would have liked if it were something different and a little less tedious. Sure. But yeah,
maybe you should just get good at this blue sphere zones.
All right. Anyway,
maybe that's the answer, Jonathan.
The main game that is Sonic Mania is outstanding.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's so great. I mean, we're saying it might be the best Sonic game. That's a big statement. You know, we're not just saying, oh, this is the best one in 10, 15 years. No, this might just be better than all of them, because it's got what makes a lot of them great, and then some.
Yeah.
And it's one of the best games of 2017.
Absolutely.
At $20, this game is a steal.
Yeah, because it's even longer than most Sonic games, because it's like as many or if more levels than most Sonic games, and the levels tend to be a bit longer than they used to be.
And, you know, you can replay it as 3 characters who play pretty differently.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of extras, like it's a feature-rich game. They could have sold this for $30 or $40, and I think it would have been fair. I mean, this is what would have been a full-price game 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's outstanding. If you own a system where you can play Sonic Mania, and you probably do, you should play Sonic Mania.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things about it is just, like, it being so good is making a lot of the kind of assholes who go around the internet being like, nah, the guy, like, Sonic was never good. And it's like throwing mud in their faces, like, shut the fuck up. Of course the old Sonic games were good. And now I feel like a lot of people are being exposed to why those games were good, because Sonic Mania is, you know, more modern, more accessible. And it's just, like, it's new, so people are more inclined to play it.
You hope they make a sequel?
Absolutely, yeah. I really want them to make a sequel that's just 100% original stages.
That was my thought too. Yeah.
Because I would even be interested in then, like, this team trying to make, like, figure out what would 3D Sonic be, like, in a more like rudimentary way. Like, I'm not expecting like amazing graphics, but, like, you know, I think there's an interesting conversation to be had about, like, what it, like, a team that understands the fundamentals of 2D Sonic this well. What would their version of, like, the future of Sonic from that point in time be? I think that would be really interesting to see if they wanted to go more far afield of just making another, like, Genesis-style 2D Sonic game.
Yeah, but I really hope we see more of Sonic Mania in the future. This is one of the absolute delights of 2017. Yeah.
Maybe they could make Sonic CD 2 and make a, like, Sonic CD-style Sonic game and see what the fuck that would be nowadays.
All right, so Sean, you want to talk some Twin Peaks?
How do we talk about it? It's like, it feels impossible to keep talking about this show at some point. This episode was so good, Jonathan.
This episode was so good. So
Holy shit.
This is part 15. There's only 3 hours to go.
Yeah.
This one, we had another Log Lady quote as the subtitle. There's some fear in letting go.
Yeah.
Last week, part 14, we agreed was maybe one of the best 3 of the series so far.
Yeah.
I think this was even better. This goes into that top tier with parts 3, 8, 14, now 15, and I have a suspicion 16, 17, and 18 will be on the same par.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we are in the final act of this show.
Yes, and this was a beautiful, sometimes wrenching episode, and I actually want to start to some degree at the end. Okay. Is the last scene is that scene. I'm not going to go in depth, but just remember that last scene is at the Roadhouse where there's this, like, really, like, grungy punk rock band playing, and there's this Asian woman sitting at the bar alone, seems kind of sad, and these 2 biker dudes just pick her up and take her out of it and put her on the ground, and it's really mean, and she starts crawling, and she's, like, in this sea of feet, and she just screams and breaks out screaming. And the critic Matt Zollerseitz on Twitter, who loves this show and has written a lot about it, just kind of was crowdsourcing, like, what do you make of that scene? And I didn't say anything because my response would not fit into 140 characters.
Right, yeah.
But I actually want to start there because, to me, this was an episode about overwhelming emotions that cannot be expressed verbally.
Yeah.
And every scene is a different variation on that idea of feelings and senses that go beyond the verbal. And so this is, I think, maybe the most visually powerful episode of Twin Peaks so far. To me, it's got some absolute stunners of visual moments. And it's got a lot of dialogue that does not quite make sense because characters are trying to say something. And it's got these, particularly in the opening scene with Ed and Norma, this synergy of music and visuals that feels almost like nothing Lynch has done before quite. And so ending with that moment, and it's a dark version of it at the very end of this episode, but that moment of this just primal scream, that's the episode to me.
Yeah.
You know? And this is another episode that, with the possible exception of the Audrey scene, which I need to see where that's going, because at this point, I don't want to say I'm frustrated with it, I just don't know if it fits with the other stuff going on. This episode is another one that feels so thematically tight to me.
No, yes, absolutely. Because it also just has, like, that progression of starting from this place of, like, pure happiness and warmth, and then just, like, descending into darkness and sadness, and like, this, like, really negative, dark place, and then ending in this just... Because it also, like, a big part of that scene was... it's been heavily thematized throughout the whole show of, misogynistic violence and violence against women and, like, oppression and just, like, in that sense of powerlessness and victimhood at modern society and at, like, the violence committed in society, and just having her... Because it's not even... They don't punch her. They don't, like, hurt her in any way. They just literally pick her up, put her on the ground, and just sit down at the bar and don't even notice her anymore. Nobody notices her.
Like she was a backpack on the seat.
Yeah, she's just becomes completely invisible. It's like she's not even there, and she has no recourse to that other than to scream, and even in screaming, the scream is drowned out by the band, and nobody takes notice. Nobody acknowledges that she's there at all. And it is that sense of... that, like, I mean, it's like a recurring theme in fiction and literature and in film and everything from, like, basically the beginning of the 20th century on, of, like, the effects of modernity, the effects of living in these highly populated areas, and this effect of, like, being lost in the sea of humanity, where you are no longer feel like you are acknowledged in any way by a society or a culture, and are just hidden away. And I feel like that is what a lot of the characters in this episode deal with, and it is crystallized in that moment of just like pure angst and pure rage against the machine that is utterly futile.
Because for the most part, none of the Roadhouse scenes, whether they're in the middle of the episode, like in part 8 where we had the Nine Inch Nails performance, or as the coda to the episode, which they usually are, they're never like a literal ending to the episode. They're never like your characters go there and some big plot thing happens. That really has not happened at the Roadhouse yet, and it probably won't. I think it's a different space in this version of the show. So what it always is it's some kind of like poetic sort of ending, where it's the ending that kind of does some sort of thematic summation of what the episode was about. And I think this is actually one of the best ones in that sense of, like, it really solidifies what was going on in this hour of television.
Yeah. And, like, the music that they choose to play, or David Lynch chooses to sort of showcase at the end of each episode, tends to match the tone, and a lot of times the lyrics reflect things about the themes of that episode, and this one is definitely true here as well.
Yeah, so let's go back to the beginning of the episode. We start with... So this whole opening scene is the whole thing with Nadine and Norma and Ed, and the whole progression of it is wonderful, because we begin in the foothills with the trees, and we pan up to show the mountains, and then we have Nadine walking down the road with her gold shovel in tow. Yeah. You can almost imagine, like, Disney music playing in the background as she walks, which is wonderful. There's
hi-ho, hi-ho, off to shovel shit we go.
I can't wait for David Lynch's Snow White.
Oh, God. I mean, Disney's doing all these weird live-action remakes. Get Lynch to do one.
Maybe that's going to be the fallout of Twin Peaks being a success. Is he'll get to do a Snow White movie.
I mean, he's made a Disney movie before. He's gotten it in.
That's true. The Straight Story, for those who don't know. I love how this is shot, where there's these fade cuts as she's walking, which sort of show us the passage of time. She finally gets to Big Ed's gas farm, and there's this whole thing where Ed is surprised that she waddled this way. He has no idea what's going on. And there's this whole conversation where she just unburdens him and unburdens herself and says, "You're free. I was jealous. I didn't want you to have the love you want. I do love you, but that means I need to let you go," basically. And as she says, I'm shoveling myself out of the shit.
Yeah.
And I like that Ed seems to know about the whole Dr. App thing, but not like much about it, so the whole thing still confuses him.
I just love his whole response to this, because I love, like, his first reaction is just to be like, "Now, Nadine, you're going to wake up tomorrow and you're going to regret saying any of this." And I love that, because you so get this sense that Big Ed is this rock in this town. Like, he has not changed at all. Like, he still has this, like, unfortunate need to, like, care for her, Nadine in this way that's, like, kind of creates a toxic relationship. Not because either of them are mean or want it to be toxic, but it's like he's too caring for his own good.
And boy, does it feel like people I know in my family and elsewhere, like older couples in the Midwest who have that kind of bond. Yeah, it feels very... I know Nadine is a very heightened character. It still feels very true to me.
Yeah, and it's just in that like her having to because I think also like the audience is supposed to be skeptical of what Nadine is saying because it's Nadine, like she is the most like insane mercurial character in the history of Twin Peaks. I mean, this is the character that in season 2 spent the entirety of season 2 like mind fucked back into the state of being a high school girl and like dates the fucking football player and stuff, Mike. So we're supposed to be skeptical of her, but then as she keeps on saying it, I think like I really do believe what Nadine's saying. I think like she really believes in it too, and obviously she does enough to convince Ed that he goes to the Double R Diner with the biggest. Again, I feel like I made the comparison a couple of episodes ago to Sam Raimi's Spider-Man that it would have been a joke. This was like you could have just cut in the raindrops keep falling on my head scene from Spider-Man 2 in between the Nadine stuff and him arriving at the Double R Diner, and you wouldn't even notice. It's like it's Tobey Maguire and you don't even notice because it's so in keeping with him walking in there with this giant smile and waving in this really exaggerated fashion. It's great.
And before we get to that scene where he goes to the Double R Diner, I just want to focus on this scene 1 minute longer. Because there's that moment where Nadine hugs him. And it's like, but in that hug, she's letting him go. And he chokes up just a little bit. Those two actors in that scene, absolutely amazing. And again, as you said, Nadine was not particularly well used in the majority of original Twin Peaks. Even though I think she was a very interesting character in season 1. Yeah. And boy, has David Lynch given these characters the continuation they deserved. Yeah. And the acting done by these performers is out of this world. And it also occurred to me, like, as I realized where this scene was going, let's trace this. Where the golden shovel led us on New Twin Peaks. Because the first golden shovel scene was the first scene set in the town of Twin Peaks in The Return, in episode 1, after we had some of the weird stuff going on. We had Dr. Jacoby coming out wearing his weird sunglasses, and he gets a shipment of shovels, and he starts spray painting them gold. That's the first thing we saw in New Twin Peaks. And at the time, you and I were like, is that going to go anywhere? And you had the joke that, I hope he's reselling them with gold. And then which he was, but then there's the Dr. App thing, and we got that, and we're like, okay, that was super funny. That's probably it, right? Mm-hmm. And it's continued, and then it became something very real for Norma, where it led us to see her life and the Run Silent, Run Drape store, and her relationship with Jacoby, which was interesting. Yeah. And now all of that has led us here. This thing that seemed like a total goof, and then seemed like maybe a joke or a piece of social satire with Jacoby, it has now turned into one of the most real emotional through lines of this series. I need to stress again, David Lynch does not have an insincere bone in his body.
Oh, yes, absolutely. He's the most earnest man on this planet.
He does not prank his audience. It's easy to say, like, oh, he's trolling us. No, he's never trolled his audience. Yeah. All of this comes from a deeply sincere place, whether we understand it or not. And I feel like the golden shovel stuff will be like my evidence number 1 from here on out. Because like that was so easy to look at and say, this has to be some kind of troll or prank, right? It's like, no, he doesn't do that. And he believes in this. Because this is also like, as you say, it's got that kind of raindrops keep falling on my head quality to the scene. But it's not a spoof. It's not a farce. No, it's so earnest, even if it's a little silly, because love is a little silly, and David Lynch knows that. But that whole progression that over now 15 hours of story, Dr. Jacoby getting a mysterious shovel shipment led us all the way here. Yeah. How amazing is that?
I mean, it is definitely something like if you have been watching this show and have been assuming that David Lynch had no idea what the bigger picture was stringing people along, this is definitely evidence against that fact, because it does feel like, as bizarre and circuitous as it was, it feels real. Like it is legitimate, like powerful storytelling, because like all those scenes have mattered, and those little moments where we check in with the doctor and we check in with Nadine and we follow this along, and we got Big Ed for the first time a couple of episodes ago, and like checking in with his life. Like all of those things have led to this spot where it does feel like this like weirdly surprisingly organic turn that Nadine has, like as strange of a path it is, and as strange as like the medicine was for her, she has found a way to kind of turn her life around in a weird way and release Ed, which is like one of the longest running like subplots in the history of Twin Peaks that goes all the way back to basically the beginning. Is that was their plot, was that Ed and Norma are in love, that Ed is trapped in this relationship with this marriage with Nadine, who is crazy, and that's goes to back to the very beginning of Twin Peaks, and there is this legitimate build up from there to this moment.
Yes, and again, like there aren't, At this point in the return, I think we can pretty confidently say there really have not been any just random scenes. Everything has, over 15 hours, which is a long time for a TV show now, everything has had a purpose and a place and has had a payoff later on. And that's a really incredible thing. I think as a piece of structural TV storytelling, Twin Peaks The Return is a monument, a monumental achievement. This aired the same night as Game of Thrones, the episode 6 of this season, which was called Beyond the Wall. It's the big one that we got this season, and it was maybe one of the worst episodes of Game of Thrones ever.
I saw a lot of mess about that episode on Twitter.
Oh, because structurally, it fell so hard and flat on its face and revealed a lot of structural problems Game of Thrones has had this season. And to watch that and then to watch Twin Peaks and be like, this is master storytelling. And it threw into sharper relief what my issue was with the zombie episode going on in Game of Thrones. It was a very different thing, but it is a thing to think about. So yeah, we're getting into the bigger picture here, but this episode really solidified for me that, okay, we only have 3 hours left and there's a lot to wrap up, but I have 99.9% confidence they can do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Obviously. So, but the second half of this scene is we fade to the Double R Diner, music on the jukebox as Ed pulls up. The lyrics, "I've been loving you too long to stop now." Great song choice. And he just walks up to Norma with confidence and tells her what happens. And then
I'm a free man.
I'm a free man. But then we're a little sad because Walter, the agent, is here. And we're like, oh no. So it's like a classic rom-com scene. Except Ed might be too late. And so Shelley takes Ed's order. He asks for a cup of coffee.
And a cyanide pill.
Yep.
The way he delivers it, it's a very cliche line, and it feels like a very old school, it feels like a line that would be from a movie from the 50s or something, but he delivers it so note perfect.
Yep.
In a way that I was actually kind of taken aback by how well that line worked.
Yep.
I would not have thought, looking at a script, that line would have worked.
But this scene has a happy ending, because Norma has something to tell Walter. I'm exercising my option for you to buy me out for family reasons. And because she says she has a wonderful family and wants to take care of them and spend more time at home. And as she says this, the music, which had gone down, swells fully. And Ed is closing his eyes and breathing in and out, and the camera zooms in on him. And then Norma puts her hand on Ed.
Her hand comes in on the frame onto his shoulder.
Yep. And he smiles just a tad, almost imperceptibly. And he whispers, "Marry me." And they just kiss, and Shelley looks on, smiling, as we all are.
Yeah.
Madchen Amick had a great tweet where she said, "Me in this shot is everyone watching that scene." And she's right, Shelley is the audience in that moment. And she says, Norma says, "Of course I will." And then we just cut to these poetic, Ozu-esque images, like Yasujiro Ozu, of clouds floating in the sky to kind of represent this happy moment. What a scene.
It's so amazing. It's just, it's one of the, I'm always really fascinated by how they choose to open these episodes, because a lot of times there are scenes like this one you would in no way expect would be at the beginning of an episode. This is in a more traditionally structured TV show. This would be the kicker at the end of an episode,
at the end of a season.
Yeah, I mean, this is if it was Twin Peaks 1, it would be that would be the end of an episode. It was this big moment of oh, they're actually together. This subplot is, maybe not completely resolved, but is in this last stage. They are actually hooking up. That's the climax of that subplot. And here, it's the first pair of scenes at the very beginning of this episode. That also was not necessarily set up at the end of the last episode or anything like that, because this show is not really doing that.
But as we said, it has been set up so precisely over the course of 15 hours to get us here. Because there's also the Norma side of it, where we saw a little bit of Norma every time we went to the Double R, and then kind of more and more until we kind of got to, we were being prepared for what headspace is she in going into this scene. I mean, I have very rarely seen TV storytelling seeded this well over the course of this many hours. It's beautiful.
And then one of the other critical points about something like that is that it's not just that it was seeded, but that when it is executed in such a superb and kind of masterful fashion that if this was the first episode you saw, you would completely understand the entire dynamic of this scene, these two scenes, the relationships involved, and it obviously would not have the same amount of impact, but you could understand those scenes on their own, separated from everything else. They exist on their own and tell their own little story that fits in with the larger story. But that is a really key thing that I think a lot of TV shows forget to do, is that making your scenes and your like subplots and like those kinds of standout sequences stand out on their own is not just for like viewers who haven't been around for the entire season to be able to understand like and catch up and get in on the action, but it makes those scenes clear and more evocative and more effective if they can work on their own as small stories.
Absolutely, it's just good filmmaking.
Yeah,
and Lynch is just warming up in this episode.
Yeah.
Because holy crap! Because from those beautiful shots of the clouds, harsh, sudden cut to electrical sounds and a dark, jittering black and white image of electrical poles on the road, and then this POV in a car driving down the highway in the dark.
Yeah, our dark coupe shot of the front, from the front, like the hood of the car with the lights, which is like, if there is one sequence of shots, and he's gone to it several times now, that like defines a huge part of the tone to Twin Peaks: The Return to me, it is this shot of just this car driving through the woods with the headlights illuminating the dark road as it turns.
And we proceed to one of the mindfuckiest mindfucks of Lynch's career.
Oh yeah.
Because Dark Coupe is basically coming back into the Northwest Passage. I don't know if he's in Twin Peaks yet, but he's clearly in the Northwest. And he pulls over to a gas station where one of the dirty bearded men walks out.
It is a convenience store,
and
technically.
It's the convenience store from episode 8. And not just that, the piece of music that starts playing here as the captions, as I told you should watch the captions, tell us very helpfully is the Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima, which played during the atomic bomb scene in episode 8.
Yeah.
So it's playing that piece of music again. Very meaningfully. So we're to that place that was like in all the jittery shots in episode 8.
Yeah, with all the people like walking by super fast because it was kind of...
So we are there now.
Yeah.
And the dark man leads Cooper up the steps. There's this static cracking as they disappear slowly. And the way I described it in my notes is it looked like an electrical current like dying out. Because it's not just they flash disappear. Yeah. It's like they start to disappear and then they come back in and they disappear and then finally they're just gone.
Yeah. And I love that they he walks up that staircase and to where the staircase goes up and there's like a turn with the guardrail, but there's no door there. Yeah. It's just a blank wall.
Yep. And then we have atmospheric wind and harsh strings as we zoom into like black and white woods, like we're moving through them in like a disembodied POV shot.
Yeah.
And suddenly Dark Cooper is in a room where a dirty man with a black face and like blood dripping down, like black as in like it's painted black or something. It's very weird. Like not blackface, but it's hard to describe. Yeah. It's like a mask almost. And he's got like blood dripping down his face. He's sitting there. Dark Coupe says he's looking for Philip Jeffries, and the man pulls a crank, and then like electrical sounds like start happening, and then we have footage of the masked midget dude from Firewalk with Me.
Yeah, with like the weird the giant nose white like plaster mask.
And I think it's footage from the deleted scenes.
I think so. I'm not sure.
Because this whole place is clearly supposed to be the set from the deleted scenes of Firewalk with Me. That's like the place above the gas station.
Yeah.
That's like where
he lives in a convenience store. Like one of the first things that Mike tells us about Bob.
Yes. So anyway, another man walks in as the seated man bangs a stick on the ground, and then suddenly, well, that's nothing suddenly here, but like slowly, Cooper is now led into darkness. The first dirty bearded man leads him down this long, dark, empty hallway. The only light is this lit room at the end. And as he walks, you get one of the great images of David Lynch's career. And it's this superimposition of as he's moving, we have the trees from before. And they are moving, like the camera is moving through those trees at the same pace as Evil Cooper and the Dark Man walk through the hallway. And it's like this equal superimposition, and it is utterly haunting. And it's creating this sense that and we get it more later in the sequence, that Lynch is showing us two worlds existing in tandem in the same place in space-time. And they're merging with each other. And it's a beautiful, haunting image.
Yeah. I mean, it made me think of something I think we talked about last week, or maybe it was I think it was the episode last week where the the FBI, or not the FBI, the sheriff and everyone go into the woods and talked about how there's this great tradition in a lot of 19th century American literature. Think if you go back to high school and think about a Scarlet Letter or something like that. Like a lot of Nathaniel Hawthorne stories use this trope of going into the woods and the wilderness, and because that's in America. We lived right next to this large untamed wooded area, as opposed to most of Europe by that time was so fully colonized and if you were in England or the UK, there's no huge woods anywhere, and America had this whole frontier that nobody could that was so mysterious and nobody knew what was there. Think also the horror movie from last year or 2 years ago, The Witch, uses that trope and that motif really well. And last episode of Twin Peaks: The Return, use that, I think, trope to create that sense of ominousness and that omen of moving into the forest and moving into this more like spiritual primal place. And this is like the darkest version of that. And I like how it equates like this rundown, disgusting, abandoned building as being the modern version of that, of like these unseen, hidden spaces that you move into that you don't know and can't perceive what like sort of supernatural or spiritual forces like lurk there that are going to attack you and assault you, and for like a Nathaniel Hawthorne story make you question your faith or whatever,
Yeah, and there's a couple more superimpositions we'll talk about later. But I love how Lynch uses it to like illustrate those exact kind of themes you're talking about. Have you ever seen the movie from a couple years ago by Jonathan Glazer called Under the Skin? It's got Scarlett Johansson.
No, I haven't. Yeah,
it's a great movie, and it ends with a big like forest kind of sequence and some superimpositions, kind of like this that I love. That was one of the associations I was thinking of when watching this. But anyway, they finally reach that staircase. And they go up very slowly, very deliberately. He keeps the camera low, like they're moving up high, and it reminds me of those shots of the Palmer house in the original Twin Peaks.
Yes, yeah.
Of like under the staircase. But anyway, Cooper finally opens the door, and he's now in what looks like an empty lot. I think it's a motel. And
it kind of looks like in episode 8 when the fireman like left that one building and like was walking to another one. It kind of looked like that area to me.
Oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, all these spaces are probably very connected spiritually, if not geographically. But yeah, he moves with purpose towards this dark door in the corner, which is room 8, which one of the people in a cell later on will also be in cell number 8. If we want to take note of numbers.
I mean, it's just like lost up in this bitch.
Anyway, he knocks, and behind him, a figure in a mask and nightgown saunters up to him. The way this is shot, like the contrast, it looks like a mannequin at first. Like the facial features are very hard to see. I could not make out the gender of this person. I
think it was supposed to be a woman.
But the face is very masculine.
Yeah, you're right. The lighting on it is very unusual.
Yeah, so it's all mysterious. The door. She says she'll unlock says they will unlock the door for evil Cooper. And does so, and then Cooper enters, and then we have inside there's this light bulb humming erratically, and the fluorescent light up top is flickering. Otherwise, the room is so dark. Cooper is looking towards the camera. We cut to his POV, and he's looking at just a wall, and then the wall disappears to reveal this Baroque image, as I described it, of a big metallic bell billowing smoke.
It's almost like in an old 17th or 18th century ornate teapot or something.
Yes.
If you've ever seen those kinds of things.
Yeah, it looks very much like the images from episode 3 where Good Cooper was.
Yeah.
Or, as I said, virtually any David Lynch painting.
Right.
If you are not familiar with David Lynch's painting, I actually think it's super important, not important, but it's super helpful to interpreting Twin Peaks The Return, because this is by far the most he has ever, with the possible exception of Eraserhead, leaned on his own painting sensibilities for his visual style in his work, because there's most of how he visualizes the dark, otherworldly spaces in The Return is in a very painterly aesthetic. And it's something I thought of here because we're going to talk about this whole Philip Jeffries sequence, and it's very interesting.
Yeah.
But visually, what's going on there is that if you look closely, this is actually another superimposition, where the wall, and you can tell by the radiator, is superimposed over all this, but it's like a 75-25 superimposition, not 50-50. And so there's all these dark things going on. There's the smoke. It's got a very painterly aesthetic in terms of composition. And if you've seen Lynch's paintings, I would recommend the film. It's called David Lynch, The Art Life. And Criterion is releasing it in September. It's a new documentary. And it's wonderful. And it's mostly about his paintings. And you get to see a lot of them. And you'll see this persistent theme where he has these very dark, otherworldly figures. But to me, it's Lynch's paintings are like putting on these weird goggles and seeing a darker dimension within our own. And that's how he's visualizing what we call the Red Room dimension in this.
Right, yeah.
And it's something I love, that it's and they make it pretty explicit here through the visuals with all these superimpositions that the actual space Cooper is in is like the woods of Twin Peaks. But all of this is also there. And I think it's really interesting how these episodes and the visuals are really in conversation with David Lynch's work as a painter. And that's something he has not done a ton of before. So it's a really interesting artistic evolution for him.
Yeah.
So I wanted to mention that before we get into the scene, because this is basically another sequence where Lynch has had to be very creative because he doesn't have the actors.
Yeah, I mean, this is a question we've been asking for a long time, because the name Philip Jeffries, which is the David Bowie character, the FBI agent from Fire Walk With Me, who is in the most insane scene in that movie that all of a sudden that scene makes perfect sense now, which is like, I would have never thought that would be one of the things I would say coming out of Twin Peaks: The Return, is that somehow that sequence of Fire Walk With Me makes perfect sense to me. But yeah, obviously David Bowie passed away, and so we've been getting all these references to Philip Jeffries, and we've been speculating, well, like, what is he going to do with it? I don't think anybody would have ever come to the conclusion that Philip Jeffries would have been a giant ornate teapot belching smoke.
I think David Bowie would have approved.
I think so as well. Like, it is. I mean, it looks like an image that could have been like on an album cover in the 70s.
Oh, absolutely. Thinking of how much David Bowie's, particularly like 70s and then like the Berlin period, is so much about like the mutability of the body, and like how souls are transferred and things like that. He would have loved this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we knew they had written a scene for David Bowie. And so it was the question of how are they going to do the Philip Jeffries scene, because they were not able to get him to film a scene before he died. And this is how we did it. So there's a different actor doing the voice, but it's an impression of the weird Southern accent Bowie did. And so it's this whole thing where, oh, it's you, Jeffries. Thank God. Why did you send Ray to kill me? What? I called Ray. So you did send him. Did you call me 5 days ago? I don't have your number. So it was someone else who called me? We used to talk. Yes, we did. It's so weird.
It's just like, it's just the dialogue that Dark Cooper has in so many of these scenes is just inscrutable, and yet in the moment it feels like somehow it is making sense to you.
And we do get this cut here to the Jeffries scene in Fire Walk With Me, now rendered in black and white, where he has that one weird line, I'm not going to talk about Judy.
Yeah. Which was something that I thought, like, so had to not have been in the original, because I didn't specifically remember that line. I'm like, there's no way that I've like just went on YouTube and it's like, yeah, no, he totally just says that randomly in the middle of that fucking scene. It's just like buried in there. He straight up says that line. I thought they had like overdubbed the voice or something to like put that line in there. It's like, nope, they're legitimately pulling all that from that sequence from that movie.
I totally get it. I did remember that line because it's a particularly weird one, but it seems way out of left field.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Cooper tells him that about this scene, that in 1989 you showed up at FBI headquarters and said you'd met Judy. And then there's this ominous humming and the device clanks and Jeffrey's bot says, so you are Cooper. And then we switch to a close-up on Evil Coop because it's a sort of a weird reverse shot to this point. And Coop says, Philip, why didn't you want to talk about Judy? Who is Judy? Does Judy want something from me? Why don't you ask Judy yourself? Let me write it down for you. And then numbers just come out of the smoke. Like, they are the smoke. They like billow. Yeah. And Cooper like furiously takes out a notepad and writes it all down and keeps asking, who is Judy? He says, you've already met Judy. What do you mean I've met Judy? And then like the scene ends with him yelling, who is Judy? Who is Judy? And that's where Jeffrey's smoke robot fades away.
Yeah.
So that was a scene.
Yeah, and it's like...
So is Judy gonna be an important figure going forward?
I guess, like, the only two things I can think of is, one, like, it was the weird woman that unlocked the door for him, like, 5 minutes before that scene was, like, one thought that occurred to me when Jeffrey said the line, you've already met Judy, is like, well, he did just meet this lady for the first time. Or maybe it's the crazy, like, monkey lady with the eye problem in the jail cell.
Boy,
maybe
that's
Judy.
Well, and this is another interesting scene because this is one moment where we've been talking so much about the dual Coopers, that there are two Coopers now, but Philip Jeffries here, or Jeffries' bot, just says, you are Cooper.
Yeah, because he remembers being in the FBI office when he wouldn't have been Evil Cooper yet. Which also in that scene, when they re-showed that scene from the last episode or whatever, and it's the part where Jeffrey says, like, who is that there? That's like... implying that, like, he somehow knows that Cooper is going to switch. We took that as being time-space fuckery. Maybe that wasn't time-space fuckery.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something even more going on.
It's true, and it's this really weird moment where you have to... Because we have not gotten deep into the metaphysics of, like, what this Evil Cooper is. Yeah. Like, how deep is the actual split between these bodies and souls? Like, does he have all of Agent Dale Cooper's memories and thoughts and all that in there?
One thought I had, I don't know if we talked about it on the podcast, but it was that episode where they talk about the Blue Rose cases, and it's like the other doppelganger case where one of the women dies and the other one disappears, and the one who's shot says, I'm like the Blue Rose. This is the fake one. And I think you're supposed to just assume that the fake one is the evil one. but what if that's not how it works? Like, what if Evil Coop is literally in Cooper's body, and Cooper is the one that is in a fake body? Like, Cooper is the one that is a simulacrum, and Evil Cooper is the real Cooper. Maybe not in soul, but in body.
I totally think that's a possibility that I guess I hadn't thought about much yet. But it is like this whole idea of duality here. Because, this is the Cooper who's been in the world. The Dougie Cooper we know came out of an electrical socket and maybe has gone back into it. Given a later scene, jumping ahead a little bit. So I don't love like trying to speculate forward on this, but there's so much to break down.
This definitely is one of the more enticing scenes in terms of giving you the little hints, and then also is a healthy dose of the random nonsense numbers. That's a theme in Twin Peaks: The Return that I love.
Because then we get in the captions, I love it says static sputtering intensely, and then images of the convenience store like episode 8 like fluttering, and then it's Cooper is just in a payphone out front on a really turned Dutch angle, which Lynch almost never uses those, so it's really fascinating. And then we another scene kind of starts right here where Richard, the evil kid, Dick Horn, is there holding a gun on Evil Cooper.
Yeah, it's a very classic kind of like gang or like crime movie shot of like the gun just like pops up in the middle of the frame and kind of shocks you.
Yes. And so Richard, or Dick, as you say, thinks Cooper is FBI because he has a picture that his mom had. And this is where we get the explicit reference. Cooper asks, "Who's your mom?" And he says, "Audrey Horn, and your name's Cooper." And then Cooper spits and then punches the shit out of Richard and gets the gun out of his hand and says, "Don't ever threaten me again. Get in the truck. We'll talk on the way."
He kicks him on the ground a couple of times for good measure, which was cathartic.
But they're going to go together now, presumably father and son, which I think we're going to learn more of. And Richard gets in the car, and Cooper sends a text to an unknown person, maybe Diane, maybe not.
Probably Diane was my guess.
Yeah, and it says
Las Vegas ?
Yeah. So they get in the car and drive off. But Lynch holds on the front of the store and zooms slowly in as the car leaves, and then we cut out. And inside, light and smoke come in and out of the convenience store, and smoke starts billowing. There's this electric crackling coming from inside. The smoke rises like this giant cloud as the lights get fiercer and fiercer. And then another superimposition. It's disappearing into the trees. Like I was saying earlier, these two pieces of reality that are like overlapping from separate dimensions, and one reasserts itself as the other plane falls away. And I love that scene.
Yeah.
Boy, what a visual statement. Because again, it's very weird, but this is Lynch at such a height of his filmmaking powers. I never look at images in Twin Peaks: The Return and feel just baffled by them. I really do get something out of them all the time. And this is one of those where it really does, his whole conception of these two dimensions really does feel like there's a dark world and it exists within our light world, and they share a plane, but they are separated by dimensions or something like that. And he says that all to us visually.
Yeah.
And I love it. And it's such a great way to both further talk about the Red Room and all that stuff, and also not and complicate it more.
Yeah, instead of demystifying it, it actually mystifies it even further.
Yes, it both demystifies and clarifies in weird ways. But anyway, we fade to black here, and then I have one note that just says "Holy fuck," because
good note.
Yeah, and then we whoosh over the Twin Peaks trees. There's wind, and we go above them. He loves these shots in The Return of that very high vantage. Must be a helicopter shot of the camera, and it moves down to this little waterfall, and then fades to a pan sideways through the forest. These very ominous images, very reminiscent of the scenes from last week's episode.
Yeah.
But now we're not with any of the people or any of those people from the sheriff's department. We're with Becky's husband, Steven, that dirty, weird kid, for another very inexplicable sequence. And there's a ton of dialogue here. I won't get into all of it, although I think there's some interesting writing where he is with a woman. I think it's the woman he was with a few episodes ago when Becky tried to shoot him. And they're talking about something that he did or had done or is thinking of doing. I don't think it's... Some people have taken this scene to be like, oh, he must have killed Becky.
Which is what I thought at first, because I think the beginning of the scene feels like it's supposed to imply that. Because also, the shot is so tight on them, and they're kind of looking a bit off the camera in a way that makes you... I kept on thinking that the camera was going to pull out and it would reveal that there was a body there. But the fact that it doesn't do that, and the dialogue gets more and more sort of mercurial and strange because he's high out of his fucking mind, makes me think it is hard to try to derive any sort of concrete physical thing that happened that they're referring to, because there might be no thing that happened at all. It might just be he shot up one too many times or something, and then that's just it.
Yeah, like, I totally think like that could be the right conclusion that Becky is dead off screen somewhere.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be that sure based on what happens here. Because the dialogue here specifically is, he's like rubbing his leg and clutching a gun and saying why over and over. Or she says why, and he says, there is no why, I did do it. No, she did it, I can't, no, I did it. No, Steven, stop it, you didn't do anything, you were fucking stoned, what the fuck did she give you? Like, that's kind of the evidence for it, and it's so all over the map.
Yeah.
But I felt like I had to write down a lot of this dialogue because it's so weird. There's this, she's trying to get him to give up the gun, and he starts going on this monologue where he says, look at me, I'm a high school graduate. And he pulls something out of his pocket, like he pulls out a clip for the pistol and loads it, and says it's going to end it. And he says, where will I be? He's looking up at this big tree, which gets blurry, and he starts speaking nonsense. He says, where will I be? Will I be with the rhinoceros, the lightning in the bottle? Please. Or will I be completely like the turquoise? I feel something. Fuck. Or ... fuck. It's like this weird stoner beat suicide poetry.
Yeah.
That we get in this sequence.
He also says maybe the most romantic line ever, which is, I really enjoyed fucking you to the girl, which is like a really good line. There's something about that line.
I have it. It's do whatever you want. I liked fucking you. Did I tell you? I liked it a lot. She starts sobbing. Just so you know that I like your cunt. Like sometimes it's so amazing you're making me cry. Stop it, cunt. That's an amazing...
Yeah, it's just an insane... It feels like you said... It almost feels like legitimately like Allen Ginsberg-esque like beat poetry from the 50s.
Yes. But in a very weird setting.
Yes, in a very displaced setting.
Yeah. Most of these are these very tight shots. We do in the middle of all this get a long shot of the two against the tree, totally dwarfed by the forest. Like one of those shots I'd love to see on the big screen or something because it's beautiful and haunting. And then finally, the man that we see a man earlier in the scene walking his dog, like not someone we've seen before, and he comes up upon them and they freak out. Steven tries to hide the gun. She runs to the other side of the tree. Doesn't seem like the guy does anything in the moment. But then we rest on the woman, and she's on the other side of the tree, and it's a tight close-up on her. And we hear the gun cock, and then we hear the gun fire. She starts to freak out, but tries to calm herself, and then we get these POV shots of her looking up at the forest around her. The shots swing and dance through the foliage and the light. And I say POV shots of her, it could be also a representation of like Steven's soul leaving his body.
Sure.
If we assume he's dead. I mean, there's a lot of ways to read that. Those disembodied POVs Lynch likes in this. And this is where I made the note, simply remarkable filmmaking, because something we have not gotten across yet, a little bit maybe with that last part. The cinematography and like the cutting and everything in this scene is so intense and so hauntingly beautiful. It's a wild scene.
Yeah, and there's one of the dynamics I really love about the scene is the playing with, also like kind of going back to that, like the mystification of the woods and the mythologizing almost of like the woods in Twin Peaks, and having them be there and having this like strange isolated moment that feels like it exists outside of time and space. You know, it's so detached from the rest of reality and how removed it is, but then you have this like guy walking his dog, like the most normal thing in the world, who sort of like interrupts that, and like that's like it breaches that space where he, like, you know, this guy can't just like be spouting off his crazy poetry anymore. He's grounded back in the real world, and so he kills himself.
Yeah. And then we do have a scene where the man with the dog gets back to the RV park and tells Carl what he saw, and we point over to Becky's trailer, and we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
All right, then we have a scene at the Roadhouse where now we apparently see what the Roadhouse is doing when they don't have a band, because the guy comes out and says, next on the Roadhouse favorites is Sharp Dressed Man by ZZ Top. And then he has this like crappy volume slider, like handmade on stage.
It looks like a 6th grader made it.
Yeah, and he like slides it all the way up. And then ZZ Top is playing on the speakers, and James and his weird friend Freddie, with the glove,
man with the golden hand, or the green hand, I guess, technically.
They come over to the woman Renee's table, the woman who has seemingly been taken by James, and James by her a little bit. And James just says it's nice to see her, and then her boyfriend, named Chuck, freaks out and starts beating the shit out of James. Oi, says Freddie, and we get some very British stuff from him, and then punches the dude with the glove, knocking him flat. And what's great about this whole sequence is he punches 2 dudes out, and each time the music skips and stops for a beat with the action, and then resumes like it's being punched and affected by the punches. Like he's punching the soundtrack.
Yeah, like the punch is so powerful, it's like disrupting reality. Because also the sound effect that Lynch uses for the punch is really good. It gets the impact across remarkably well.
Yeah. So that's a scene. And, James tries to apologize, tells everyone to call 911. Renee is freaked out. I think everyone is a little bit. Although James is taking this all remarkably in stride.
Yeah, he's got this very, cool way of just, he's very nice and considerate about the whole thing. It's just someone need to call 911 because these guys are seriously hurt.
Yes. We do a few scenes later, cut to the Twin Peaks Sheriff Department, where Freddy and James are put in cells. This is what I was saying earlier. I think it's Freddy who winds up in cell 8. So if that's at all... you want to draw that comparison. I mean,
every single individual numeral has been, of 1 through 9 or N0 have been showed at different points in Twin Peaks, so...
I don't think he did it on accident. That doesn't mean that there's a huge, deep meaning to it. Anyway, we also have the Billy character here still bleeding from his face, and the weird, the chattering woman, who in the captions, her name is apparently Nido. N-A-I-D-O.
Yeah, I saw that in the credits.
Yeah, so that's interesting. And James... again, mostly taking things in stride, just says, what the hell? And that's when we get the pan across the cells to the chattering woman reaching out, almost like she's feeling something like energy in the air.
Yeah.
So that's a scene. But speaking of all that, in between all these scenes, we have some scenes in Vegas. We go to the FBI, and we get a fake out, because we think we're going to see Douglas Jones, but it's clearly the wrong Douglas Jones, because it's like a...
Kids!
Wilson, what the fuck?
He's maybe my favorite, random character in all of Twin Peaks: The Return is the Las Vegas FBI dude.
Yeah.
He's really funny.
They got the wrong Douglas Jones.
Yeah. Kids.
Anyway, and then we cut to the pit boss guy, Mr. something or other, the villain through a lot of the Vegas stuff. I forget his name. Asking for Anthony, who's the guy who turned on him in the last episode with Dougie. So 2 episodes ago. And as this scene starts to play out, a woman walks in, blows the pit boss's head off, very graphically with a gun, and then shoots the other guy there. And then she's talking on the phone, and then hears one of the victims breathing heavily and goes, She goes, shit, hold on. Goes back, gets out her gun, shoots him dead, and goes back. And says, 1 down, 1 to go. Yeah, French fries and extra ketchup. And I wrote, okay then.
Yep.
We later learn in another scene that this is Chantal, the assassin lady who is with Tim Roth's character, Hutch. And they are in the car, in the van, eating, I assume, Wendy's, because they talked about that last time. Talking about how it's okay to kill.
It's the nation of killers.
Killing all along. And
Thou shalt kill.
She says, but my fun's over when we actually kill someone. Can't torture a corpse. These characters are so clearly characters from a Quentin Tarantino movie. Yeah. David Lynch pulled out of that universe and put in his own. I think actually very, self-consciously. Them and the Mitchum brothers. There's this whole segment of the Vegas stuff that feels very much like Lynch doing a weird Tarantino riff, but I love it. And yeah, she hates the little ketchup packs, but Hutch did get her dessert and says, I love you, Hutch. I love you, Chantal. And they look up in the sky and she says, that's Mars. So that's the end of that scene. Yeah. For whatever that was worth.
It's the third most romantic scene, He didn't say, I like fucking you.
Jesus. All right. Meanwhile, at the real Dougie Jones's house with the red door, we finally get some more Dougie. We didn't get any last week. Janie is serving him a piece of chocolate cake, and she's crouched down next to him, gazing upon him longingly, and he takes a bite very slowly. Is it delicious? Delicious. And then on the captions it says from Janie, pleased sigh, which I think that's her autobiography is going to be called. Yeah. No. And she says, oh, Dougie, it's like all our dreams are coming true. And he says, true. And then this is where I have to go meta with my notes, because I wrote something here that I think is actually very important to the scene. As she stands up, I wrote in my notes, I hope he never wakes up and they just keep living happily like this, which I think is a point you had gotten to a few episodes back.
Yeah.
But I think everyone at this, I think David Lynch and Mark Frost want you to say those words to yourself in that moment. And they want you to because of all moments for Dougie Jones to wake up, it's this.
Has he woken up?
Something happens. Let's talk about it.
Something definitely happens.
So she goes to the kitchen, and then we have a long shot where he moves one shaker away from the other one.
Which is the most outside of, because it's important to note, there's none of the weird lights or anything in this scene. Yeah. So that we have seen before, whenever Dougie has been proactive about something in the past is because he's been explicitly guided by some light or a vision of Mike in the Red Room, and there's none of that in this scene. So this is the first time in the entirety of Twin Peaks The Return that without some sort of explicit supernatural guidance, Dougie Jones has had an initiative about literally anything. And it starts with him moving a fucking salt shaker a little bit to the right for no discernible reason whatsoever.
Yep. And then he takes another bite of chocolate cake. And every time I say he takes another bite, it's like 30 seconds of film. And then there's this remote, and he clicks on it. Nothing happens, so he takes another bite after a pause. Chews it, clicks again, nothing. Another bite, another click. Finally, it turns on, and we're with Sunset Boulevard. Mm-hmm. And Mr. DeMille is talking about the old team. Nothing can stop us. Dougie stirs in some way. And then Mr. DeMille says, as it zooms in on him, get Gordon Cole. And the moment we've all been waiting for to some degree, something like this, Dougie just panics. He freaks. He pauses the movie. He's extremely proactive, as you would say. And he hears this electrical crackling. From his POV, we look at the electrical outlet. And then Dougie gets down on the ground, and he looks like really shaken. And he's crawling towards the outlet. There's this faint scratching, that kind of hum that we hear with all the Dark Coop scenes. It intensifies the closer he gets. And he has his fork from the chocolate cake, and he tries putting it in the outlet, like a kid playing with it, almost.
And this is the point of the episode where I was going, Dougie, Dougie, no, Dougie, stop, Dougie, don't.
But he looks serious. He has purpose. He flips this fork around so it will fit from the, like, not the prong side, but the handle. Puts it in all the way and electrocutes the shit out of himself in a horrifying sequence. Janie starts screaming, and then all the lights go out, and that's it.
Yeah.
So that's a scene.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Like, what if the conclusion of that is just he's dead? Like, he just electrocuted. Like, there's nothing more. He just electrocuted himself to death.
I don't think that'll be the case.
I don't think that'll be the case either, but fucking dude, we've said this before, I'll say it again, it is impossible to predict what the show is going to do.
This is an episode composed entirely of scenes that feel like they should be the last scene of the episode.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, because this feels like an important scene, but I love this scene. To me, it kind of recontextualizes a lot of the Dougie stuff for me, that this is one of those scenes where I felt like I hope Dougie never wakes up, and then he kind of does, to whatever degree you read that as. He has some recognition. He hears Gordon Cole, and it's like, that's, like, all these things that have accumulated, that one shakes him. And his reaction is to go electrocute himself. Like, he's resisting this call to come back to full awareness. Like, that's, to me, one way you can read that scene is, like, he sees that and he's like, no, I don't want to go back. Like, because he seems so panicked. That's one thing I saw. And to me, it's like, there's a part of me that there's so much about this, like, lovely little life he and Janie have built together, or has been built around him, you could say, is that maybe that's been happening all along. I would love to go back and watch all these scenes, because there's every episode, there's some sign, some call where we think he's going to turn back into Cooper, and he doesn't. And I wonder if there is a subconscious part of Cooper/Dougie inside that's just like, no, I'm not waking up. This is working. We've got a good thing going on. And that's one way I read the scene. There's another way, which is like, that's how he's going to wake up, is that he's going to go do that.
I mean, because that's how he came into this world, was through an electrical outlet. And, like, electricity has... I mean, how many times in your, like, notes have you used to have the word, like, electrical buzzing and sound effects? You know, like, it's been a, like, persistent theme that I think has only intensified to the point in this episode where it's, like, it's really intense. It's a kind of constant thing in most of the episode. In any, like, the Evil Cube episodes, there are sections and stuff. You're getting this constant electrical buzzing, like you're by, like, high voltage generators and stuff. And I think it's just part of the thematizing of technology in general, because it's like, it's that electric fire of the nuclear explosion that we're in. And so I think it's really hard to just take this scene and be able to kind of, like, understand exactly what is trying to be communicated by him jamming the fork into the outlet without the further context of where it's going to go, because I think there are so many different ways you can interpret it of, like, what he's trying to accomplish, if he's even aware of trying to accomplish anything in that moment.
I mean, so at this point, I would be a little surprised if we get into the next episode and he's just normal Dougie Jones again. I also wouldn't be surprised at all. So, you know what I mean?
Like, there have been so many fake outs. Maybe this is just the greatest fake out of all.
So who knows? But that was a big moment.
Yeah,
for Mr. Douglas Jones.
Because there's also a chance that, like, part of that scene is that maybe he was actually being guided by the Red Room, and we just weren't party to that this time.
Yeah,
like, it's impossible to know what is going on in that head of his.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah.
All right. Then we cut to the Log Lady's house as we enter the saddest scene of the episode, and maybe of Twin Peaks The Return, because this is a hell of a scene.
Yeah.
So she makes a call, and Hawk takes the call, asks what he can do for Margaret. And she says, "Hawk, I'm dying." And he says, "I'm sorry, Margaret." And she says, "You know about death, that it's just a change, not an end. It's time. There's some fear in letting go. Remember what I told you. I can't say more over the phone, but you know what I mean from our talks when we were able to speak face to face. Watch for that one, the one I told you about, the one under the moon on Blue Pine Mountain. Hawk, my log is turning gold. The wind is moaning. I'm dying. Good night, Hawk." And that's it for Miss Margaret Lanterman and for Catherine Coulson. I had said when we met the Log Lady in episode 1 of New Twin Peaks, or saw her again, that I would not be surprised if they kind of brought her death into the show in the way that Catherine Coulson was clearly on her deathbed when she shot these scenes.
Right.
And they have done that, and I always have to read out her speeches because they are such tremendously beautiful pieces of writing, and they are tinged with this extra melancholy and beauty of this woman, lifelong friend of David Lynch, who is shooting these scenes. I think her scenes were shot before anything else for The Return, basically on her deathbed. Yeah. And now she, kind of lives on through these images. And this was a particularly beautiful monologue. Lynch shoots these scenes a little different, actually. They're not just static shots like they are in the other sequences. We actually do move in on Margaret in a close-up, which we haven't really gotten before. And we also, on Hawk's desk, we get a little zoom as he starts to sort of realize what's going on. Even though Hawk is very stoic in this scene, it is shot a little different because he says, "Good night, Margaret," and then hangs up and says to himself, "Goodbye, Margaret."
Yeah.
And that's a way to do it.
Yeah, one of my favorite details in this scene is that halfway through, she's not talking on the phone anymore. Like, the phone is gone, and she's just talking. And I think there's like a sound effect in in a Hawk shot that maybe kind of implies she hung up the phone and maybe put it on speakerphone or something. I don't know, but I like the idea of she doesn't need to talk on the phone in this moment that because again, there's been all this thematizing about technology and electricity and how those things can be negative in a lot of ways, and I like the idea of her in those final moments being able to sort of transcend that, because she also says, because it's after she's talking about when we were talking before, face to face, when we weren't talking on the phone, and getting past that barrier in some spiritual way. I think I thought that was really effective.
It's amazing how well these scenes work, given, clearly the Catherine Coulson scenes were shot probably months before Hawk's side of the conversation.
Right.
And so this is all edited together. It's a way to get the Log Lady in the show, even though Catherine Coulson was not in condition to be on set and all that stuff. And yet her presence has been felt so powerfully in these episodes.
I think she's a more sort of primary force in this series than she was in the original Twin Peaks to me. She was it was an interesting character that had some really standout scenes, but in a lot of ways she has felt like the heart of Twin Peaks The Return, because we have come checked back in with her every 4 to 5 episodes, and it does feel like this being her last appearance in her swan song, because then you get the scene after where Hawk confirms that she has passed away. It feels like it is the appropriate time to sort of usher us into this last act, along with juxtaposed with this inkling of maybe this is where Cooper is coming in, leaving the Dougie body or something. That's where that is moving at the same time as she is passing on.
Yeah, and there is another very poetic series of shots here after Hawk hangs up, where we cut to this half moon in a foggy sky. The wind whooshes, and then the clouds roll over the moon, and they're gone. And again, what a poetic piece of imagery.
Yeah.
And then we do get the scene in the conference room where Truman, in a very weird technology moment, is on his laptop just looking at a picture of a fish. So that was weird.
Oh, you do.
But anyway, Bobby, Lucy, Andy all come in. Hawk told them to meet here. Hawk comes in and tells them that Margaret Lanterman passed away tonight. And then Lucy says, "The Log Lady's dead." And Lucy tears up, and everyone's sad. And I think one of the most touching moments is actually Truman takes off his cowboy hat. And it's an interesting scene to me because, again, talking about moving into this last phase, you've got these 5 characters. They're gathered together in this little room, very dark. There's only one light on. And it feels like, there's these 5 people united just trying to fight for what little light is still out there. But it does seem a lot darker right now.
Yeah.
And, just great. And then there is another terrific superimposition of the trees in darkness from above with Hawk's hanging head over them.
Yeah.
So Hawk hangs his head at the end of that scene in sadness, and the trees are superimposed over him. One of my favorite images in all of Lynch's career.
Yeah.
So, holy hell. Then we do get the Audrey scene, and I will say, I don't know if this felt fully at place after the Log Lady stuff and into the Roadhouse stuff. There probably had to be something to get us from that moment to the next one. But I don't know. I mean, clearly, like, all this Audrey stuff is probably happening on the same night. It's still very weird and inscrutable.
Right.
There hasn't really been any forward momentum. I'm interested to see where it goes. I don't know if tonally it felt at home here.
I don't know. I thought it felt good to me. I
Okay.
think there's something so... Like, the Audrey stuff is a subplot, I think, that is actually, like, the most sort of sinister in it, because you can't put your finger on what is quite going on there, but I think it is, like, in some ways, the most stark portrayal of abuse in the entire show is that more than it is, like, you know, Dick Horn coming in and brutalizing his family. It's like this relationship where Audrey Horne is clearly, like, extremely distressed by everything that's going on here. She's clearly being gaslighted, like and manipulated by this guy, Charlie, that we know nothing about. And he has this, like, there's almost a quality to those scenes of that, like, in the last episode of Twin Peaks, it's like Charlie is somehow he's the villain of Twin Peaks, or, like, whatever the fuck that would mean. There's almost something about him that I could like, because also we are so trapped in that room with Audrey that we have no idea. She can't leave. She, like, is on this moment of, like, trying to leave, and then Charlie psychologically manipulates her into convincing herself to back off.
I mean, how surprised would you be if that's not even in reality and she's dead or something?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Like we have no idea what's outside of that room, and there's something about that. It's so displaced, because it's also displaced in time, because it feels like all of these things that she's like all those scenes are taking place right next to one another. We just keep on revisiting them in what feels like it's out of sequence, but it's impossible to know.
And I agree 100%. Like, thematically, this stuff is so important to Twin Peaks: The Return as a whole.
Yeah.
I just don't know if tonally the cut from Log Lady Death this into the end, I almost felt like this does, I think, belong in the episode thematically. I might have put it earlier in the episode. It's fine either way. It's still, I agree, because whatever's happening here does feel very thematically important, and probably at some point narratively important, because we did get the Audrey Horne name check in this episode from Dick Horn. So that's, But this was another, as you say, like, the gaslighting. Someone did a really interesting thing on Twitter where they pointed out, in the first scene with Charlie and Audrey, Charlie says, "What? I don't have a crystal ball," because he's talking about, like, predicting the future. He literally, on his desk, there's a crystal ball.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to zoom in to see it, but that's, like, what a detail.
Yeah, it's just, because it's such a weird journey, because at first, like, I was always kind of put off by him, but I thought, like, he was just a weird guy in the first scene, and then now we're at this point where, like, this dude is fucking evil. Like, there's something about him, but again, it's almost like the point of it is that you can't point it out. You can't.
Well,
there's no one thing, because he, in, like, the, like, literal moment to moment, he is the more rational person in those scenes. Like Audrey is the one that seems like she is completely hysterical, but you get this subtext that, like, she's hysterical because of what this guy is doing to her.
And, you know, here's how you know Twin Peaks is great. It gets better the more you talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think I can talk myself into why this is the cut, is because what I just said earlier about that idea of these 5 people gathered together fighting for what little light is left in the world, and then we cut to this abject darkness of Audrey's life. And yes, it is horrifying and off-putting, and I think it is 100% intentionally all of those things. So yes, I think maybe that cut does make sense. As we don't,
because I think it serves as a nice transition into the last scene.
And also, like, there's a reason we don't go out on the Log Lady, because there's no time to grief for that. There's all these other things going on, literally for the characters, figuratively for the audience. Yeah, and then we do have the Roadhouse scene, which we already kind of broke down. One thing I noticed is, with all the images of people dwarfed by trees in this episode, and the superimpositions of trees, like the one we just got with Hawk, the way where the scene where, you know, she's crawling lost among the legs, they look like trees to me. Like, she's lost in a forest.
There
but
is
it's humanity.
particularly, like, as that it keeps on cutting back to that shot, and, like, there's more people surrounding her, it becomes more and more like that, of, like, because it gets to a point where it's, like, absurd on a literal level of, like, there's no, like, people would not be standing in that way, but it does create this overall effect of her being lost in this forest of people.
Yep. And then this episode ends on a smash cut to black, and then starring Kyle MacLachlan, and then the credits come up as we fade into that image of the motel from earlier, where we do get the weird woman-man thing at the very end.
Yeah, there's like a weird cut right at the end of the credit sequence.
And there's a playful little thing here where Catherine Coulson got her dedication in episode 1 with everyone who appeared there who had passed on. But here it says, in memory of Margaret Lanterman.
Yeah.
Which I thought was nice.
Yeah, me too.
Just a weird little note to go out on. So that is Twin Peaks Part 15.
It was a hell of an episode, man.
Hell of an episode.
And it makes me really curious to see what the next episode is going to be. Like, in some ways, I would be in no way surprised if we don't even see Dougie at all next episode.
It would kind of fit with what's happened, the way the pace has worked out. But no, we're so near the end, and it does feel like it's not like the pace of the show has changed, but it feels like there's such weight to everything that's happening.
Yeah.
I don't think there's going to be any downtime between here and the end. I think next week we are probably going to set up for whatever is in the finale, which probably is those 2 hours are meant to air together for a reason.
Right. Yeah.
So, I am very excited. I can't believe we're almost at the end.
It's been a damn journey, dude.
It has been. I'm so glad we've gotten to talk about all of it.
Remember back in like the first one we did, the first podcast talking about the first 4 episodes, and us being like, I wonder how long he's going to be Dougie Jones. Like, we were so naive then.
So naive, just wondering about the structure of this thing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is just, we keep saying it, and we will, in 2 weeks, that will probably be the only topic of the podcast. We'll be putting this all together, but man, this is one of the great things I've ever seen in film, television, whatever.
Yeah, so it's unbelievable.
So we will be back next week. Our main topic next week will be a review of Uncharted: The Lost Legacy.
Right, yeah, I need to get that.
All right, so I'm excited to play it. You're excited to play it. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about Twin Peaks. We'll talk about whatever else comes up. Halo Episode 6 on Friday. Yeah. 6 through 10 are on Patreon. More is coming out. All this good stuff. We got that Doctor Who bonus podcast. Another one coming next month. Good stuff on the horizon.
Absolutely. Hats off to you, Log Lady.